The story begins by talking about the malevolent tower that descended from the skies. Known as the Emissary of Destruction, it appeared suddenly, and countless monsters emerged from it, spreading destruction wherever they went. Humans had no hope of resisting against it. Humanity was on the brink of extinction, until something finally happened. The first generation of Awakened appeared. They are known as the Founders. With their abilities, they managed to suppress the monsters and prevent them from leaving the towers. At the end of the battle, the monsters were contained and the towers were destroyed. After that phase, humanity experienced for the first time the taste of victory against the invaders. The Founders saved the world and were worshipped as heroes. Their legacy was immortalized in the Founders' Mausoleum. A century after this battle, a boy named Minado loves reading stories about the legends of the Founders. He finds these works in the library. Wielding only a dry tree branch, the great swordsman sliced through an army of 10,000. With wisdom granted by the knowledge of magic, there was a mage capable of casting any kind of spell. In the present, these feats are already legends or like a compilation of fairy tales about the Founders. But Minado is a dreamer who wants to make his mark on history with grand deeds. In his right hand, there's a magic circle, the seal of the chosen ones. The mark had appeared on him, and with the mark he swears he will fulfill his dream, just like the Founders. And don't forget to leave your mark by subscribing to the channel so you don't miss the next part. Now at school, a teacher speaks to his students congratulating them on their results. On his phone, Minado comes across the message that he had failed the exam to become a hunter. Two classmates say they are going to the class party to celebrate and that he could go at least to clean up the trash. As an Awakened, it is enough for you to write your name on the test to pass. But Minado has already failed the exam for the third consecutive time. The hallway joke is that he is a failure at the exam, and after the first admission, he would only have 3 years to pass the test. This was his last chance. As things stand, he will never become a hunter, even though he aced the written test and even though he trained his aura exhaustively. Even having the mark of the Awakened on his hand, nothing worked out. He stares at the mark on his hand. Useless. Now it was just a scar and nothing more. Minado can't hide his frustration as tears run down his face because he also wanted to be like the Founders. Suddenly, a classmate of Minado appears at the door, telling him he should hurry and go to the school gate as soon as possible. He quickly pulls himself together and says he had already forgotten about it. He sighs. Minado wishes, if it were possible, to be recognized and adored like that person is. To the girls, he is amazing. To the boys, he is everything they want to be. The charismatic guy is Hizaki, an A-rank hunter. He briefly apologizes for causing such a commotion by being there. Minado arrives late, and soon two fools confront him for being tardy. It was unacceptable that he made such a revered person wait. Hizaki intervenes and tells them to stop. He's not there to reinforce bullying the weaker ones. The idiots try to make amends. Hizaki approaches them and more seriously asks if they see the reporters behind him. The fools quickly apologize to him. One of the reporters approaches him and says that this was the school Hizaki attended, and that they couldn't wait to start filming that documentary. With a photo in his hands, he said he'd like to use it as the cover of the documentary. That photo was of him defeating a dragon with a single slash of his sword. He asks Hizaki what he thinks of this idea. Hizaki responds embarrassed that it was a good photo, but it made him a bit ashamed. Hizaki entered the academy 3 years ago along with Minado, but he was a notorious genius who achieved top marks in practically everything he was evaluated on. Besides that, during the time they spent together, he was a massive clown. He bullied Minado incessantly. In other words, he was just a jerk pretending to be something he's not. Minado can't believe he'll have to spend the whole day with him for the documentary production. He sees no purpose in it at all. The cameraman asks who the person behind Hizaki is. Hizaki says he wants to introduce someone who also joined the academy with him in the same year, but he forgot the guy's name. A guy whispers in his ear that his name is Minado. Then Hizaki exclaims, "That's right, the trash Minado." And even though his grades weren't good, he kept asking for favors. And thanks to that unexpected assistance, he barely had time to improve himself. Minado was always available to guide him. Minado can hardly believe the lies he is hearing. Hizaki continues, saying that Minado even asked him for money. Lie. Hizaki used to steal Minado's money, and he never asked that jerk for anything. And the year they spent together was easily the worst he has ever had in his life. The reporter praises him for the nature of that story and says that Hizaki is the embodiment of perfection. Posing for the recording, Hizaki cynically says that he will be an Awakened who will write history. The cameraman says that Minado must be very happy to receive so much help from Hizaki. He then asks if Minado has any words of gratitude for him. No, he stammers. There's no way he can say anything positive to that scumbag. Hizaki asks in front of the cameras if Minado failed the exam again. He then lowers his voice threateningly and tells Minado that he is completely useless and should not ruin the day. But all Minado has in his memories are the hateful days when that clown was a student there. However, coerced and afraid, he stammers that he is grateful for everything that has happened, for everything Hizaki has done. There were no words to describe his gratitude. After that, Hizaki lets him go and asks the filming crew to move on to the next topic. He then points to his trophies and asks if they can see them. The crew says they are very beautiful, and they continue recording. As they leave, the reporter asks if anyone knows the name of the weird kid, and if they really needed to include him in the documentary. Someone from the crew says it's completely unnecessary, no one would care. Even if you're a despicable person, as long as you become a hunter, people will adore you as if you're truly special. Your name will be remembered. Minado overheard what they said about him and tried to say his own name, but someone calls out to him loudly. It was Hizaki, accompanied by 2 idiots. He tells Minado to meet him at the founder's mausoleum after class. Minado asks why. Hizaki asks if he would like to take the test one more time. Minado doesn't understand, but Hizaki says he'll talk to the association. Minado is confused, but then he hears Hizaki say he's only doing it because it will boost his popularity. The last scene of the documentary will be filmed at the mausoleum. After it's filmed, they'll talk about it. Minado should go, but Minado doesn't believe it's possible and wonders if anything will really happen. He hates the idea of being used as a tool to increase that clown's popularity, but despite the situation, it's another chance for him to achieve his dream. He's optimistic, and this time he's sure it will work out, he thinks. During the recording, Hizaki stands in front of the mausoleum. A hero alone makes a vow to protect humanity in the future. The moment is very Instagrammable. The reporter thanks him and says he managed to take many great photos during that moment. He also thanks the hero for taking the time to be with the crew. Hizaki thanks him and says he can't wait to read the article about himself. Saying goodbye to the crew, he heads inside the mausoleum. He asks his 2 fools if they found the access point. They are digging into the floor of the place. They say yes, pointing to an access point with a staircase leading underground. They ask if that's what he was looking for. It was exactly what he was searching for. But someone shouts asking what they are doing there. Hizaki replies to Minado, saying that he still hasn't figured it out. He's on a treasure hunt. Minado can't believe it and says he's just desecrating the founder's tomb. He doesn't even have respect for those buried there. Hizaki says he knows who's down there. He then breaks one of the stones with his foot. He says that what's there are just rotting corpses from the past, nothing more. He wouldn't miss the chance to make money off it because in the end, they're just bodies with no real significance. He doesn't care whether they're normal bodies or the founder's bodies in the mausoleum. Minado remembers his dreams of wanting to be like the founders one day, an awaken whose name will go down in history. Minado is extremely enraged and charges toward Hizaki, but Hizaki easily dodges and lands a blow on Minado's stomach. The hit is strong enough to make him spit out a worrying amount of tomato sauce. Hizaki asks how he dared to do that, but all Minado can think is how awful this is. He's being hired by Vasco. One of the fools tells Hizaki that they found some things and shows him a backpack loaded with treasures. Minado watches everything moribund. Hizaki takes an orb in his hands and is impressed by the aura the item emits. It's marvelous. With that item alone, he could live the rest of his life without needing to work. Minado wants to reprimand him, telling him he shouldn't do this, but he's so weak that his voice doesn't even leave his mouth. Now, turning to Minado, the hero says he'll explain things in a way Minado can understand. He's been looking for a cowardly weakling like him all along, and Minado was easily deceived with words because of a hopeless dream. Hizaki knows Minado has been visiting the library frequently. When he found out, he laughed uncontrollably because he had found the perfect pawn for his plans. A failure like Minado got sick enough to want to loot the mausoleum and disappear. A tragic story. Minado tries to say something, but he's too weak, and Hizaki can already see the newspaper headline the next day. Looted the mausoleum and even managed to evade the police. The culprit, a third-year academy student who always failed the exam. Hizaki drops Minado's body into the lake as he tries to remember his name. Minado falls, watching the cynical smile of the one who managed to deceive everyone. He sinks into the water, descending deeper and deeper. As he continues to sink, he wonders if this is what it feels like to drown. He trained and prepared every day. Everything he did amounted to nothing. He's drowning, slowly disappearing, with no one to remember him. Suddenly, lights begin to appear in the darkness of the lake. Numerous human-like figures surround him, extending their hands toward him. A vessel. He will be the vessel for all of them, the one who will fulfill their desires. Minado wonders how he could possibly be a vessel for this. The figures explain that they are the heroic spirits sealed in that place, the very souls of the heroes. Minado understands even less. He can see the lights and hear the voices, but he has no idea what's happening. He's curious if these are really the founders. One of the spirits addresses Minado, telling him that the mark on his hand is the mark of the void. It holds no power on its own. However, it can manifest any kind of power, even those beyond his imagination. He must choose one of them and form a contract. They represent the pillars of nearly every skill imaginable. Magic, endurance, swordsmanship, spear mastery, alchemy. All these powers will be granted by the one he chooses. Now he must decide which power he desires. Minado wants power like Hizaki's. No, he wants a power incomprehensible to the world. A power strong enough to overcome every humiliation he has ever suffered. The voice urges him to choose someone. Minado boldly declares that he wants all of them. He wants all their powers. He demands that they give everything to him. A greedy request, but one that doesn't sound wrong. However, it seems impossible. No matter how strong the vessel, attempting to hold all that power could be catastrophic. But Minado interrupts the voice, insisting they stop talking and just do what he asked. The lights begin to converge on the mark on his hand. All the resentment and derogatory words he's ever heard flood back into his mind. A massive golden circle forms beneath his feet. Hizaki and his cronies notice something is happening and turn to look back at the lake. An underwater explosion erupts, sending water high into the air, falling back down like rain. Hizaki wonders what it could be. Above the lake, Minado hovers, glowing with an intense blue light. He descends and positions himself before the stunned cronies. He does not look friendly. One of the goons sneers, saying that Minado dragged himself back like a stubborn cockroach. Minado holds a twig in his hand. The goon asks what what he plans to do with that and starts laughing uncontrollably. They think he intends to fight them with that thin twig, which is more amusing than intimidating. Hizaki loses his patience and orders them to finish this quickly. He commands them to make sure Minado doesn't come back from the lake this time, even if that means cutting off his head. The cronies understand, and one of them summons a sword. He boasts that in the last exam he awakened an A-ranked aura skill, something Minado should know. The thud has learned the way of the sword, and Minado should be grateful to be taken down by such a skill. Minado repeats the words, questioning what path of the sword this thug claims to have learned as he lunges to strike. Swift movements fill the air. The goon lands thinking he delivered his blow, but quickly realizes he's been slashed multiple times. Minado then asks, what path of the sword did you say you mastered? As the thug collapses, the remaining cronies can only watch in shock. Minado turns to the sword-wielding goon and asks if he would mind teaching him the path of the sword as well. He wants to know what it is, how it works since the thug claimed to have mastered it. The other crony, angered, starts casting a spell. He chants the incantation, speaking of the green cradle, the gaze of destruction, declaring himself a 7th level 2nd class mage. But Minado, pointing his finger now crackling with yellow energy resembling lightning, calmly says, "You're too slow." He then utters, "Had as lightning." The crony is terrified because the spell was cast without an incantation. A massive yellow explosion engulfs the area. The crony is left charred like a piece of bacon forgotten in a frying pan. Hizaki witnesses everything and realizes that Minado sliced with a twig and cast a spell without speaking. Impossible. There can only be one explanation. Long ago, just a dry branch, a great swordsman cut down an army of 10,000 men. With true magical wisdom, a mage could cast any spell without uttering a word. In the present time, these tales are so bizarre that people consider them exaggerated myths. The awakened souls resting in the founder's mausoleum now reside in this vessel. In Minado's body, there are a total of 106 souls. He recalls Hizaki's words in the documentary that his name will not be forgotten. And Minado affirms that yes, he will be remembered forever, just like the new myths surrounding him. Minado glows with a blue light and Hizaki stands defensively before him. He thinks it's unbelievable, as Minado managed to absorb the souls of all of them with his mark of the void. Hizaki senses that the souls are content with the space inside. They begin speaking inside Minado's head, saying that the space is incredible and that it has been a long time since they were free from boredom. One of them even starts to stake out his own territory, claiming a part of the space as his own. Minado knows the legends well, having memorized them long ago. The souls of the founders are now inside him. He closes his eyes and can see some of them within the space inside him. Now, a race has begun to see who will take control of the boy's body. Behind Minado appears the great swordsman who defeated an entire army with just a twig. His name is Hinoki. That's right, he says, being remembered after so long is expected given my deeds. He now wants to know what the boy plans to do. The boy thinks it's about Hizaki, but the swordsman corrects him, saying he wasn't referring to that trash in front of them. He wants to know what Minado will do about this as he points with his finger. This seems to catch Minado's attention, and he starts to walk. Hizaki, terrified, begs him not to come closer, thinking Minado is approaching him. Hizaki then prepares himself, saying that Minado should not underestimate an A rank like him. But before he can summon his sword, Minado strikes him with the back of his hand. The fool is sent flying as if he had wings. Minado only wanted him out of the way. In front of him, a threatening energy is growing. As it expands, lightning forms around it. Minado confronts it with his samurai's soul alongside him. In the city, something's wreaking havoc. A furious three-headed dog is on the loose, rampaging. A man stands near the beast and says he will leave it to Kizuragi to handle. The beast charges at the man, but he leaps into the air. Now airborne, he prepares to strike the dog. He launches his attack, hitting the monster's back squarely. The crowd around cheers as he took down an A-rank monster with a single blow. As expected of an S-rank hunter, Kizuragi, he acknowledges the praise and asks the crowd where Hizaki is. Because of the interview he gave, his fame as a young prodigy must be interesting. Kizuragi says it's good that the boy's fame is growing since it will also boost the guild's reputation. Anyway, once that interview is over, he plans to head to the nearest bar to get drunk. But before anything else can happen, he senses the rising demonic energy nearby. The pressure is so intense that it's causing people near Kizuragi to collapse. They writhe in pain, asking the hero what could be causing this. He realizes that B ranks and A ranks are powerless against a threat like this. There's no mistake. It must be an S rank monster. Kizuragi extends his perception and detects the mausoleum. The fool who was struck by Minado tries to stand up and realizes that a terrifyingly threatening monster stands before them. It emerges from the backpack filled with the looted items. Hizaki can't understand why a demon like that is there. Minado says that this happened because the fool had looted the mausoleum. One of the tower's boss monsters had been sealed there, but thanks to Hizaki's brilliance, the seal was broken when he removed the items from the mausoleum. The swordsman confirms this, explaining that some of the tower's demons managed to survive by hiding and putting their bodies into hibernation. That creature is the embodiment of the void, a demon so strong that the S rank is inadequate to describe its power. The swordsman adds that the demon could overpower people from kilometers away with just its poisonous aura. In his time, such a creature was common, but it's far too powerful for the current generation to handle. Hizaki runs away in desperation. He needs to escape or he'll be crushed. Minado tells him not to run, as the beast is always searching for targets. Seeing the movement, the creature shoots one of its tentacles toward Hizaki. Hizaki notices it and, terrified, tries to defend himself with his sword. But his sword, instead of stopping the attack, shatters and the tentacle reaches him. That sword had cut through dragons before, but now it was as useless as a pin in a war. The tentacles pierce his skin and spread like an infection. He screams in agony as the tentacle drains him. Minado looks at Hizaki, now a dried husk, and remarks that he tried to warn him. The swordsman asks Minado if he's ready to fully surrender his body to him now. He's eager to see the founder Hinoki's one-handed technique. Hinoki makes his move to take control of Minado's body while the other founders are distracted. Minado says he doesn't mind handing over his body. The swordsman is pleased to hear this, but before anything can happen, the other founders appear. They start pulling Hinoki by the hair, telling him he shouldn't do that. Another founder declares that such a powerful vessel shouldn't belong to Hinoki, but to someone else. The exposed swordsman pleads for the other souls to calm down. Minado says he has a condition. He will only yield his body to all of them. The founders don't understand what he means by that, but Minado declares that he will surpass them all for sure. In due time, he'll become as strong as they are. Now he wants to discover just how strong he can become. It's time for them to show him what they can do. The swordsman is a bit annoyed by the proposal, thinking the boy must be out of his mind. Minado raises the twig, and behind him, the swordsman mirrors his movement. They execute the same strike. Numerous blue rays of light fill the area, and the demon's tentacle is torn apart by the cuts. However, Minado's twig breaks in the process. He watches as the monster writhes in pain. Then he takes a new stance, and another founder appears behind him. He delivers a palm strike, and another of the monster's tentacles is obliterated. The monster's eyes now fill with fear at the sight of the small boy. In response, the monster turns his attention toward Minado, intending to attack him. But Minado has picked up a branch along the way and starts wielding it like a staff. Another founder appears, and Minado strikes the monster again. He dodges and makes another attack, using the abilities of different founders. The final strike is strong enough to disorient the monster. Minado calmly approaches the fallen backpack. He picks up a bow and arrow and fires repeatedly at the beast. The creature writhes in agony as Minado watches calmly. He prepares to continue attacking, and the mark on his hand glows intensely. After that, he unleashes numerous attacks and even casts spells. The monster can't retaliate and appears to be subdued. Soon, Minado reaches the broken sword lying on the ground. The monster had buried its tentacles, hoping to launch a surprise attack. But before they can touch Minado, the air is filled with electric yellow energy that incinerates them in an instant. High above, facing the monster, Minado prepares to strike using the broken sword and the one-handed style of the swordsman. He slashes through the monster, cutting everything beneath the blade's edge. The creature's body is now split in two. Minado smiles, having subdued a powerful demon. The moonlight bathes the now peaceful night, free from the monster's hostility. Meanwhile, a crow watches everything. Far away, perched on an antenna, a young man answers his phone. He's informed that the monster has been defeated, even though he was already on his way. He asks if there was any hunter nearby strong enough to do that. According to the images captured by the crow, was a student from the academy who dealt with the problem. Hearing this, the young man smiles and says he'd like to meet this student. He is none other than the most powerful awakened being, Midori. Midori answers his phone again. He mentions that it's been a long time since he last received a call from the director. As he says this, he's sitting on top of a massive dragon's body. They're discussing the S-rank monster that appeared, and Midori confirms that he wasn't the one who dealt with it. According to the crow's footage, they identified the student who did it. It was Minado. Midori heard that Minado had failed the admission exam 3 times in a row, and because of this, even with the footage, it's hard to believe. So he asks the director for a favor. Elsewhere, students are talking about what happened the day before. The aura was so hostile that one of them couldn't even move. Another says that even though it's over, he still doesn't feel right. A third student begins boasting, claiming that he was the one who took down the monster. His friend calls it impossible since it's been 10 years since the last S-rank hunter appeared at the academy. The student responds that that's precisely the point. Rumors say that a student from the academy defeated the monster, but it's hard to believe. There's no way someone from there could have done it. If such a capable person existed, they wouldn't be at this academy. As they say this, Minado is nearby, exhausted, barely able to stand. He thinks to himself that the only thing he's heard since arriving at the academy is about yesterday's event. A jerk bumps into him, telling him he's in the way. Minado, too weak, falls to the ground. The jerk sees this and thinks that there's no way the mysterious S-rank hunter is the loser on the ground. Meanwhile, Minado struggles to get up. He defeated the monster the day before, but it was only possible because the founders were using his body. As a result of doing so much in such a short time, his body is in terrible shape. Someone asks if he's okay. Minado turns and finds himself face to face with the swordsman. Recognizing him, the swordsman tells Minado to get up, reminding him that he said he would surpass them all. Minado recalls his own words and feels encouraged, hurrying that's exactly what he wants, but he can barely move. The swordsman encourages him, asking him to show his determination. A student passing by thinks Minado has gone completely mad. The swordsman looks around and concludes that the level of the awakened ones now isn't just low, it's utterly mediocre. They're basically basically at the level of ordinary humans, in other words, trash. As Minado gathers his strength to stand, the swordsman continues to think. In his opinion, if the tower appeared now, the world would end with nothing that could be done, as most professionals of this era are weak. But then someone catches his attention. He senses someone very powerful nearby, far stronger than the others. Minado asks what distracted him, but the swordsman says it's nothing. The truth is, he felt a massive aura in that place moments ago, but it quickly vanished. At that moment, someone calls out to Minado, telling him to hurry to that room. Minado thinks it's about his resignation letter since he failed the exam 3 times. The test can only be taken at the academy, but the person who called him says it's not about that and that he should head to the field as soon as possible. He's going to take a new exam. Minado doesn't understand why. The students who heard this were curious, as nothing like this had ever happened before. Some students are at the windows to watch the test. Minado isn't in the best physical condition, but he needs to do his best. In the 100-meter dash, the average time is just 3.5 seconds, with the fastest recorded time being 2.7 seconds. The jerk from earlier, who bumped into Minado, says that Minado is famous for being a walking failure, wondering why they're giving him another chance. Before he can continue talking nonsense, Minado starts running and finishes the race. He completed it in just 1.2 seconds, leaving the jerk speechless. In the 3,000 meters, the average time is 4 minutes and 20 seconds, with the record being 3 minutes and 17 seconds. But Minado completes the race in just 1 minute and 17 seconds. The maximum number of push-ups in 2 minutes. The average is 215, the record 418. Minado did a small amount of 840 repetitions. In the bench press, the average is 400 kilos and the record is 620. Minado lifted the modest amount of 1,280 kilos. The students are now crowding around the windows as the so-called failure was not only passing but breaking records by a completely unreasonable margin. Minado continues to be evaluated, consistently delivering impressive results. Soon, some begin to admire him. While doing the tests, Minado wonders if the founders are lending him power at that moment, but the swordsman thinks to himself that he wouldn't help with something as foolish as that evaluation. None of them did anything. What likely happened has nothing to do with them. In the director's office, Minado's results are presented. Midori is there, and he's quite pleased with the numbers he sees. The director says that when he heard the request for Minado's re-examination, he thought something was wrong. Even though Minado's physical abilities are so impressive, the real issue is his magical capacity. In previous tests, this ability of his was simply impossible to measure. He had no mana at all. The director says it might be a waste of time for Midori. The woman turns to the hero and suggests that maybe the boy isn't living up to expectations, but Midori smiles and says they'll soon see if he can really use magic. Soon, outside, Minado is about to have his magical ability tested. He's asked if he's familiar with the test and if he knows how it works. He needs to use magic to make the fan blades spin, and the number of rotations will be used to measure his score. The average is 1,513 rotations. The record is 4,022 rotations. For the past 3 years, he couldn't move those blades no matter how hard he tried. He was completely unable to feel mana. But now he can feel it. He feels the mana around him. It moves from his right foot through the rest of his body. It circulates through his body and returns to his foot, and he can accelerate this cycle just by using his breathing. And with that, he can release this energy into the palm of his hand. The test begins. The fan blades are energized and glow blue. They start to spin. Soon, they begin to spin rapidly, to the evaluator's surprise. The rotation meter keeps rising, and the evaluator can't even see the number of rotations with his own eyes. The speed was so great the fan exploded. It spun so fast that it experienced a catastrophic failure, exceeding its limit. Debris flies through the area, scaring some students. The director in his office notices that something happened outside. The fan blade flew through the wall of his office, destroying the ceiling and the floor, and it remains stuck there. He was in shock, completely startled. The secretary returns to Midori, who is smiling. Apparently, the novice is similar to him. A second person in history who was like him with immeasurable potential. Minado looks at his own hand, surprised. He didn't expect things to escalate to that extent. The evaluator, still shaken by everything, says that Minado passed the exam to become a hunter. The students who witnessed this are now extremely surprised as Minado broke every possible record. Minado looks at his hand and thanks the founders. For all this time, he had this power within him. The swordsman looks at him happily, as everything happened as he expected. Just by lending his body to the souls of the founders, the potential of his body was awakened. It seems that the one who bears the mark of the void is not as mediocre as they thought. The swordsman had been waiting for him for over a century and asks if the other founders agree with him. Because if it's really him, Minado will be the one to fulfill all of their wishes. Minado gets briefly distracted, and from the sky descends a green light in front of where he is standing. Minado was distracted because he didn't expect an explosion right in front of him so suddenly. The swordsman realizes who has just arrived. It's the bearer of the immense aura he sensed earlier. Midori greets them. Minado is even more surprised surprised because he didn't expect Ichihara Midori to be there at the academy. He is the living legend of the present, the most powerful awakened one. The question was, why was he there? He approaches Minado and says he saw the results of the tests he took and congratulates him for them. The boy thanks him and can only think about how surprised he is that Midori even knows his name. But then Midori says there is one more test to be done. He would like the boy to try to land a hit on the strongest hunter at least once. Minado was completely confused. Midori is only 23 years old, but he has been a fully functional hunter since he was 9. No one can deny that he is the strongest in the world. He has turned thousands of demons to ashes in an instant. Weak demons and hunters could be easily executed by him with just a fraction of his power. He single-handedly dealt with the demon outbreak 10 years ago, as well as another monster outbreak 5 years ago. He is a living singularity. Minado is extremely surprised that the legend of this era knows his name. After hearing Midori's proposal for one more evaluation, the swordsman speaks to him. He asks Minado to surrender his body to him right away because he is utterly excited about the possibility of fighting such a person. The students can't believe that Midori in the flesh is at the academy, and more than that, he's going to fight Minado the failure. Midori begins explaining the rules of the challenge. He says that for Minado to win, he must land a single hit on him within the next minute. Even if he doesn't win, there will be no punishment. Midori will only attack him once every 10 seconds, and Minado shouldn't worry because Midori will go easy on him. Minado can use any ability he wants, and Midori won't use any. If he wishes, Midori will even grant him any weapon he desires to fight, so Minado should choose what best suits him. Minado still doesn't understand the reason for these conditions or what is happening. An additional test is completely outside the scope, and Minado doubts he could handle him in 1 minute. He asks again if he can really use any weapon, to which Midori confirms. After all, Midori's body is much tougher than a sword and sharper than any blade. While saying this, he splits a sword in two using only his fingers. The swordsman speaks to him again, urging Minado to hurry up and surrender the body. For the samurai, hearing those words was an offense, and he was ready to teach the modern warrior a lesson. Minado notices that the samurai is very enthusiastic about the challenge. As expected, Midori's strength is on par with that of the founders. Minado doesn't stand a chance, he sighs. If this is the situation, there's only one thing to do. The students gather at the windows again as something incredible is happening. A real battle between Midori and Minado. They are about to start at any moment. The samurai continues to hurry Minado, eager to take control of the body. Starting the timer on his phone, Midori announces that the test has just begun. Minado grips his sword firmly and charges toward the hero. The samurai is disappointed because the boy has decided to fight alone. That's not fair to him, who wanted to have fun. As he advances, Minado recognizes that this is completely futile. But surely to become a legend himself, he cannot simply rely on the founder's power. He needs to accomplish things with his own talent as well. He strikes, and Midori, who was looking at his phone, dodges. He asks the boy if he has any social media he usually uses, because this is definitely being recorded and will go viral. The students are amazed by Midori's skill, dodging Minado's attacks while looking at his phone. He continues to dodge the attacks as if it were no challenge at all. Minado keeps pressing him without any effectiveness. One of the students remarks that it's surprising that despite so many attacks being launched, none of them have managed to reach the target. However, there is something strange about these attacks. They are too vigorous. How long can he maintain that intensity? For Midori, all of this is far too slow. He can even see the feints the boy executes and the movement they will become. He dodges each one as if he were living in the future, already knowing the past. Minado is amazed because his body moves as he desires, and all those energetic movements don't demand anything from his physical stamina. He's not getting tired. Perhaps this is one of the effects of having surrendered his body to the founders. His body had not only changed, but it continued to change. Midori places the tip of one of his fingers on the boy's forehead. 10 seconds had passed. It was his turn to attack. He then prepared a flick. Minado manages to dodge as the blow, while very close, was extremely powerful. Looking back, he can see the damage left on the ground from the energy that had passed there. Taking it easy is bullshit. If that had hit Minado's head, he would have been sent straight to the grave, without a doubt. Midori found this a bit strange. Although he didn't sense any malice from the boy, he didn't believe he had miscalculated the amount of force needed for that flick, or perhaps it was something else that caused that effect on him. Minado now believes that if things continue like this, he will be knocked out soon. He needs to recall the feeling of that day, the powerful version of himself that took down the demon. He prepares himself and his body is energized. Midori notices that something has changed and the boy starts attacking him with everything he's got. The students notice that Minado's speed is no longer the same. The cell phone cameras can no longer keep up with the speed of their movements. Midori acknowledges that the attacks are stronger and faster than before. Minado can only think that to defeat this S-rank hero, his sword needs to be even faster. He perceives that the atmosphere around them has changed. He wonders if some condition needs to be activated or if the founders want to keep that a secret. Midori looks at his phone and realizes that too much time has passed. He prepares prepares to attack the boy, but this time he will make sure to attack so lightly that it would be like using a feather. He gets Minado, who flies and crashes violently into the school wall, coughing up some strawberry juice. Incredible. It was truly amazing and wonderful. Minado was fighting against the most powerful hero. If his body had been the same as the day before, that attack would have been enough to end him. He is very happy as he is becoming stronger in a short period of time. However, with the range of skills he has now, he probably won't be able to pass this test, but that's okay. He continues to advance and keep attacking. He will use brute force to make the most of the remaining time. He passes by Midori, who is still looking at his phone screen. He tells the boy that he has seen enough and that 30 seconds have passed, so it's time for him to attack again. He brings his hand down on Minado's neck, and he instantly loses consciousness. Midori acknowledges that the boy is a genius, but still far from the level of his peers. The power he saw this time, after all, was not enough to be fully tested. He takes out his phone and speaks with his assistant, saying that they should leave soon. He mentions that the test was disappointing and that he was let down. Meanwhile, Minado's hands grip the ground and hold his sword firmly. A great aura emerges, and Minado asks Midori what he had just said. The samurai, who is now in control of the body, says that the rebellious boy is taking a nap. Finally, he can use this body. Minado, who is no longer Minado now, turns to Midori and says they should play for a little longer. Inside the marvelous world of his little head, Minado observes passively what the samurai is doing as he is now in control of the body. Midori is pleased with this, as it was exactly what he was looking for. He knew that the presence he felt now was the same one that had taken down the monster before. Midori says he felt this presence earlier and that it was what made him miscalculate the force of the blow. He is unsure if it was a skill or if it was a completely different person. Regardless, Minado was a monster now. The samurai in control of the body tells the hero not to move too far away and delivers a strike that forces him to dodge. He notices that the hero's movements have changed and his strength and speed are no longer the same. His swordsmanship is also different, and before he can finish this thought, his sharp reflexes detect Minado's sword blade almost touching his skin. He dodges at the last moment and moves to gain space to stay out of reach of the sword. Midori is completely focused on the fight, and in front of him is a Minado who is entirely different and fully engaged in winning the battle. Minado delivers a slicing blow that forces the hero to duck to avoid being hit by the cut. However, he strikes the school. The students who were at the windows now move away, recognizing that the fight had reached dangerous levels. Midori now notices the unpredictability of the strikes. He feels that Minado knows where he will be in the future. It was beautiful. The technique seemed like an ancient fencing technique. It was like a stream of water, but now it had become a raging torrent. Midori says that this is necessary to defeat an S-rank like him. 40 seconds had passed, and it was now his turn to attack. He uses his hand to launch himself, while Minado says that the blow would never hit him. Dodging, he reduces the distance and delivers another attack. Midori evades, not before showing his genuine joy at the boy's performance. The students who were still near the windows now cannot believe their eyes. They are intrigued, wondering if this is really happening as Midori is on the defensive. Minado, who is actually the samurai, says that he was annoying, and that you shouldn't hold back while fighting him. He shouts in fury that he will beat him up if he continues to be underestimated. He charges to attack once again. Midori laughs for those brief seconds and agrees with the boy. He won't hold back anymore. He kicked a stone which hit the pile of weapons he had offered the boy to fight him with. That movement grabs Minado's attention, distracting him. Above, Midori was holding a spear in his hands. As he descends, he prepares his attack. Minado is pleased as the hero is finally going all out. The students watching the fight can only confirm that what they are seeing is amazing. The two are exchanging blows, their weapons crossing each other countless times, and the weapons falling from the sky are sliced through by these strikes as if they were made of paper. They continue their battle with Hinoki accelerating everything he can. The other founders notice this and praise the hero's skill as he is on par with one of the founders. One of them says that the fight is fun and it's a shame that they are not the ones fighting. Minado also observes everything. The samurai's performance isn't better because Minado's body is still not the perfect vessel. A hooded woman says she should fight and tells the samurai to stop as he was acting without any strategy. But she encounters Minado, who doesn't stop watching the fight. He identifies each of the strikes: vertical cut, diagonal cut, thrust, dodge. He names them all and repeats them with his hands. Under attack, change the center of gravity. Minado was attentive to everything happening in that fight. After so many clashes, Minado's sword breaks. He grumbles, saying it was of low quality and that it should have been bought with danger. Midori finds it all fascinating. The fight was making his heart race. There were no more cutting weapons available. He wants to know if Minado will use a firearm now. Only 10 seconds left, and he loudly asks what the boy will do. He assesses what is around him and dodges the hero's attack. One of the students at the windows, the jerk from earlier who had knocked Minado down, has a sword in his waist. Minado goes to him and takes it for himself. Midori is there in the air in front of them. He prepares his strike and directs it at Minado. He destroyed part of the school, but Minado had already dodged it and is now very close to the hero. Both resume striking each other continuously. It's so much fun, says Midori. It wants them to keep going a little longer. A female student says the building might collapse at any moment and that they should get out of there. Meanwhile, the jerk Lemon's losing his sword. Midori is now near the blade that was embedded in the school's wall. Minado is just behind him, preparing to continue his strikes when he notices what was happening. Midori had caught the blade with his bare hand. He removed it from where it was and was preparing to throw it towards Minado. The hero readied himself to hurl the blade. At that moment, Minado used Hinoki's one-handed style style, the samurai. The blade was sliced into several smaller pieces, and with just one apparent movement, Midori's attack was neutralized. The hero was even more impressed and said that the boy was truly amazing. However, the samurai was still engaged in the fight and was immersed in his desire to defeat him. He was about to launch another attack, but his sword broke. 60 seconds had passed and Midori had his attack primed towards the boy. The attack was coming clean and even the founder's soul sensed that it wouldn't be good. But Minado's soul appeared and said that they shouldn't give up just yet. He then suddenly switched places with the samurai. He moved his hand to almost touch Midori's attacking hand. He managed to divert the attack's trajectory by a narrow margin. Neither the samurai nor the hero expected a move like that, as it was enough to break several bones in the boy's arm. Now with time running out and needing to land just one single attack, Minado's hand moved swiftly towards the hero's face, which received it with no chance to react. The battle between those two geniuses felt like it had lasted a lifetime for those involved. A battle fought to arrive at a simple answer. It was like a chess match where both players were very skilled. Meanwhile, the samurai observed what had just happened in the fight. The boy was bold. It was only for a brief moment. It was unexpected, even for a founder. The opponent certainly didn't expect to be struck at that moment. The boy had taken a completely unprecedented path to victory. But even though the reaction was good, Midori simply caught the attack with his other hand. Realizing that his move wasn't effective, Minado lamented that he hadn't been able to land a single blow on the hero. However, sympathizing with the boy's dedication, Midori, still holding Minado's fist, brought it to his own cheek. Upon contact, he happily exclaimed that the boy had passed the test. The students, who had witnessed that seemingly eternal minute, wondered what the hell had just happened. Minado was injured and passed out from exhaustion. He was now in the hero's arms, who called his secretary and asked her to come quickly. She appeared beside him and asked how the test had gone. The hero said that not only had the boy passed, but he was also very interesting. And in the process, he had accidentally broken the boy's arm, and he wanted to know if she could fix it. She confirmed that she could. Meanwhile, more disbelieving students asked if the hero had really said that Minado had passed the test. That could only mean one thing. The students began to celebrate for that student had managed to land a blow on the strongest hero. Minado woke up to the noise, lying on the ground. He found himself with Midori's secretary, who instructed him not to move as she was healing his arm. He thanked her for the care. She then congratulated him on passing the test. He thanked her, and only then did he realize that he had passed the test, and he stood up startled. He couldn't believe that he had managed to land a blow on Midori. The hero appeared beside him, saying that the boy was too cruel for already forgetting such a moment. His appearance was so sudden that it startled Minado. The hero stood up and said they were even now. He passed, and that was that. He had gotten serious halfway through the test. Minado remembered that at that moment, the samurai was the one in control. Moreover, Midori continued, the boy had managed to dodge the hero's strongest attack. His move was incredible, and he should be proud of himself. The boy listened to those words coming from the most powerful hero with great admiration. Now he asked what came next, now that he had passed. Neither the secretary, the hero, nor the students understood that question. Night fell, and Minado's mother was cooking. She asked him how many guests were coming. He didn't know how to answer, saying that probably only one person would come, saying this while finishing drying a cloth he used to make the floor shine. But that was a wonderful day for them. Minado had not only passed the test, but was also escorted by Midori himself. His mother said she always believed he was a boy who could achieve anything for his effort. He listened to that with happiness. However, she was putting too much pressure on herself. Since a celebrity would visit their home, she felt that their house wasn't good enough to make a good impression. Hearing that, Minado reprimanded her and said that Midori wasn't that kind of person. The boy now waited in his room. He stared at the card he had received from the hero. Earlier at school, the hero's assistant had him in a leg lock, making him scream for her to stop because he had already surrendered. Midori asked if he hadn't told the boy that if he won, he would have to become one of his companions. But Minado said he didn't hear those words. The assistant was punishing the hero for that because he hadn't said it. Midori said that there were too many eyes in that place and asked the boy if he could visit his house that same night. There, they would talk more intimately. He's going to talk about the choices the boy has, as well as who their real enemies are. Real enemies. That made Minado very thoughtful. The tower had already been destroyed by the founders, and the current mission of the hunters is to hunt the monsters that escape through the dimensional rifts. Given that, is there something more? The boy wondered. Someone called him quietly, and soon the noise turned into an energetic shout. It was the swordsman telling Minado not to fall asleep. He found himself face to face with the samurai and all the other founders inside his mind. The samurai asked what was wrong with that. They had been discussing something and had finally reached a conclusion. Discussing, Minado was scared because he thought they were deciding who would possess his body permanently. But actually, they were before he could finish that thought. The doorbell rang. Minado interrupted the conversation because he thought Midori had just arrived, so he and the founders would talk later. He didn't understand what was happening because everything was so dark. Looking down the hallway, he saw something. His mother was lying on the floor. He screamed in fear and rushed toward her. As he passed through the living room door, he noticed a man sitting at the table. He had painted nails and was helping himself to the food that the boy's mother had prepared. He kept eating and said it tasted bad. The pots were on the floor, broken. The man asked if the boy had disciplined his mother because if she intended to impress guests, she should use more expensive ingredients. Minado asked who he was and what he had done to his mother. The man ordered him to to pay attention to how he spoke to him. He said his name was Goro. He was the S-rank hunter sent by Midori to fetch him, and he was one of Midori's companions. He told the boy to hurry up and pack his things because they were leaving that place. As soon as he finished speaking, Minado's hand was almost piercing the back of that stranger's neck. The blow nearly struck him, but the man vanished from where he was. He reappeared behind Minado, smiling. He asked if the boy was challenging him. Minado looked at his mother and remembered his father's funeral. She had raised him alone and had said she would make sure he grew up to be a happy person. He remembered how she deprived herself of things so that he could have them. She always wished him success every time he went to train, and she always made his favorite recipe for him. Now, with a completely threatening demeanor, Minado said he would ask one more time what that man had done to his mother. In his consciousness, the samurai recognized that this opponent was an S-rank of this era. It was about time. He was irritated just by looking at that guy's face. Now they would surely know, after this fight, how the founders should treat Minado from now on. The weirdo looks at the boy and says that his angry expression is very cute. He raises his hand to attack him, but before he can land a blow, his hand is captured. With a simple movement, the S-rank hero is now upside down. One of the founders noticed that the move was actually one of his own, which Minado had mastered. The weirdo is thrown through the wall, breaking it along the way. He falls onto the asphalt, trying to recover. Minado approaches him patiently. The weirdo is trying to figure out what that move was, wondering if it was some kind of Aikido technique. He had watched the boys fight with Midori through a recording. Not only does Minado have an elevated aura and great mastery with swords, but he also possesses other skills. Minado says that's what he would expect from an A rank, and the weirdo is much more resilient than Hizaki. Now he should hurry up and answer the question that Minado has already asked more than once, or things will get catastrophically crazy. He asked again what the weirdo did to his mother. The weirdo responds that by asking, Minado doesn't even suspect what might have happened. It was poison. She got in his way, so he put her to sleep. If she's lucky enough, she'll get out of that situation with just a few minor after effects. Minado says he doesn't understand why harm will love one of someone who might become your ally, companion. The weirdo starts laughing as if he just heard the funniest joke in the world. Already behind the boy, he asks if the kid is stupid. Before he can strike, Minado dodges. The weirdo continues, saying that Minado will never become one of their companions. At most, he'll be a puppet who will just follow orders. Someone as naive as that boy would definitely listen to them if his loved ones were taken hostage. During all that movement, Minado realizes that his foot is trapped under the weirdo's. The weirdo takes advantage of the moment to try to hit the boy, who manages to move away and avoid contact. Minado wonders what just happened because he felt as if his cheek was burning. He quickly realizes he's been poisoned, and beneath the weirdo's nails, needles are revealed. He says that the poison has already entered. The bizarre man says he has an ability that allows him to create dozens of poisons from his own body. It's an annoying mission to carry out, he says. If he wanted to, he could release a lethal toxin with a 5-kilometer radius. But he couldn't do that in the middle of a city. That poison would knock the boy out in just a minute. But if Minado says he'll join his organization, the weirdo says he'll give him the antidote. If he doesn't, he'll collapse in time. A toxic gas spreading within a 5-kilometer radius. That guy was an S rank, and for a normal person, that would definitely be a disaster. Minado looks at the spraying poison and, in his consciousness, calls out to Valentina, the goddess of medicine. He asks if she isn't inside him. He apologizes and asks if she could teach him how to treat that poisoning later. She timidly replies yes. The weirdo asks what the hell Minado is murmuring and if the fear of death has already taken hold of him. Meanwhile, he attacks Minado again, who dodges with ease. The Aikido move from earlier belongs to the god of hands, Huma. As expected, the founder realized that the boy managed to copy the technique after just that one moment as a reference. The samurai, the lancer, and the archer. From a very early age, Minado studied all of them and remembers everything he read in the books. The founders, whom he had always admired, now reside within him. The weirdo understood nothing. After that, Minado says he has no rational reason to be terrified of a clown like that. The weirdo gets irritated and now says he's going to teach the boy the meaning of pain. The next poison will make the kid beg for his existence to be erased. The attack didn't hit the boy, who dodged. The poison falls on a tree, causing it to wither. The slowpoke says that if the boy kneels and begs, he will ease his pain a little with antidotes. The pain he will inflict will be so intense that Minado will go insane. He continues his attacks, and one of them is getting too close. Minado reacts, dodges, and counters that clown with the punch of a saint. The weirdo spews out a lot of tomato juice from his disgusting mouth. Inside Minado, one of the founders observes the technique used. The slowpoke is thrown against the nearest pillar. Before he can understand what's happening, he's intercepted by a kick from the boy, landing squarely on his face. Illuminated feet, another technique belonging to one of the founders. The weirdo steadies himself and avoids being sent further away by the blow, but he's visibly exhausted. He screams desperately, trying to land another blow, but Minado has also prepared his own. With his hand, he breaks some of the weirdo's nails along with the needles in his hands. The attack continues, striking the loser squarely in the chest. A sharp beak, another technique from one of the founders. Dragon's claw, yet another move belonging to one of the founders. Now holding the clown's body, he executes a takedown technique, which is also from one of the founders. He throws the fool into the air. The fool can only think that this boy is very, very strange and that something is wrong with him. It doesn't matter who it is. If someone is exposed to poison even once, their judgment is supposed to be clouded. The poison should already be in his central nervous system, meaning his movements should be slowed. But even so, that guy is different. Meanwhile, a yellow energy gathers at the tip of Minado's finger. He's now using the Truth Mage, a technique from another founder. He fires the lightning bolt. The light ascends to the heavens as the founders observe what happens. The samurai asks if his colleagues saw that. He defeated that demon just once and already managed to learn many of the moves they made, both the physical ones and those of a magical nature. He doesn't care if his power comes from the mark of the void or somewhere else. The only thing that matters to him is that this boy is very interesting. They are now committed to training and nurturing this boy. If he is truly trained by the founders, Minado will become the most powerful awakened that exists. He is now holding his mother in his arms, trying to wake her up. Several hooded figures are running across the rooftops. One of them tells the others not to hesitate because at least 15 guilds are already moving to recruit the boy who fought against Midori. They needed to be quick. Magically, Midori himself appears among them, surprised that so many guilds are after the boy. But if it was just 15, those must be the last, and the hero prepares to execute his deadly flick. Before the hooded figure can say anything, he's hit by the flick and falls to the ground. Midori is on the phone speaking with his assistant. She says she just arrived and that there are no awakened ones nearby. However, it seems that someone got there before them. The S-rank hunter, Goro, the poison user, arrived before them. He paid a visit to Minado and was defeated. Midori hears this with great joy. He's already beside the boy and tells him he's incredible, as he never expected him to be capable of that. He had just defeated an S-class hunter. He asks if the boy is okay and if he was exposed to the poison. Minado responds shyly that yes and says that both he and his mother are fine. However, she is still resting on the couch, unconscious. But the samurai cuts him off, saying that if it weren't for Valentina's presence, he would have already gone to find out if God exists. Behind him, she complains that she is very tired. The samurai says she's too good because she finished everything in just 5 seconds. But since the one who produced the poison was there, taking a blood sample was quite simple. Midori apologizes for being late because he was taking measures to prevent other groups who would have done the same thing to the boy, all because of the video that was recorded of the two of them. When the boy hears that there were other groups, he asks Midori if the weirdo was lying about being his companion. Midori confirms, saying that there are even other people who wouldn't hesitate to use his name to sound convincing. He asks if his assistant has finished, and she materializes near them, saying yes. All the damage done to the house's structure had been repaired, thanks to her ability, much to the boy's amazement. Alright, now Midori would like them to come in so they can finally talk. This conversation is about the boy's future. The day dawns, and a car is waiting for Minado. Outside his house, his mother asks if he's okay, if he hasn't forgotten anything like his wallet and phone charger. He says everything's fine and that she worries too much. She remembers the conversation from the previous day. Her son was moving to Midori's house. The hero said the boy still had undiscovered talents, and he asked her to entrust him with her son, as he would ensure that he would become an excellent hunter. Minado's reaction was more energetic than expected. He couldn't believe the invitation because Midori himself had chosen him. However, his mother was a bit sad knowing her son was leaving. She hands him a bag containing his lunch since he hadn't even had breakfast, but she says he can throw it away if he doesn't like it. However, he reassures her that everything's fine. He remembers a part of the conversation from the previous day where his mother asked if he would face many threats in the future, to which Midori confirms. She says her son was always impressed by the founder's deeds, and her son had always fought to become a hunter, up until now. It's an honor for her that the strongest hero is taking him under his wing. But as a mother, she can only worry. She knows what a hunter's role is to fight monsters. But Midori says that in this field, there's no such thing as certainty. However, he would train the boy to be strong, at least to a point where he wouldn't even lose to the founders. So she entrusted her son to Midori's care. In the car, Midori's assistant asks if it was a good idea to make such a bold promise like that, as they don't really know what might happen in the near future. Midori watches the boy say goodbye to his mother in the car's rearview mirror. She tells the boy not to sleep without clothes on, as he once caught a cold that way. He doesn't even remember when that happened. She also advises him to separate the clothes by color when he needs to wash them. On the other hand, Midori resolutely says that he will fulfill his part of the promise, no matter what happens. They say their goodbyes. It's time for them to leave. He asks his mother to wish him luck. She tells him to take care of himself and to visit her during the New Year's holiday. They depart, and the boy apologizes for making them wait. Midori asks if he is ready, and Minado replies that he is. If he looked back at his mother one more time, his resolve to leave would crumble. Midori understands the boy and says they have a long journey ahead, and he can do whatever he wants, whether eating or sleeping. Midori looks at the lunchbox his mother gave him. He takes it and remembers her words. Opening it, he is met with a surprise. Not only is it his favorite recipe, but there's also a good luck message written on it. He thanks her for the food while reminiscing about all all the moments he shared with his mother up to that point. He eats with tears in his eyes. The food is delicious. The assistant continues driving and Midori rests comfortably in the front seat. They proceed with the journey to the hero's base. Soon, Minado is stunned by what he sees. Midori welcomes him, saying he is finally entering the property, which is not only magnificent but also enormous. Only a handful of the awakened are allowed access there. Only those who make up the anti-prophecy unit, or simply anti-prophecy. That was their headquarters. The boy hears that name without fully understanding its purpose. The doorbell rings and a man watches them from one of the windows. He informs the others that they finally arrived, bringing the new member with them. A girl asks what he said, while another confirms that it's the rookie. A blonde guy remarks that it's rare these days to have a new companion there. However, a red-haired guy is still resistant and wants to know if the rookie is qualified enough to be called a companion by them and to be part of the anti-prophecy. Minado is curious and wants to know what that name means and if it refers to Midori's guild. His assistant apologizes for delaying the explanation. She couldn't openly talk about it in the presence of his mother because it's a state secret. Hearing that, the boy becomes even more impressed, but she confirms that it is indeed a classified matter. Midori says they'll discuss the topic soon, but first, they should take his luggage to his room. The assistant offers to carry his luggage, but he declines. However, someone shouts from afar saying they need to explain it to him. This person lands with a kick aimed at Minado, who defends himself. The blonde guy praises him, saying he's very good. Minado realizes this person is strong and asks who he is. The blonde guy does a backflip and introduces himself upon landing. His name is Hanada, and he's part of the anti-prophecy squad and now Minado's companion too. Minado hopes he's not the one who has to explain things. Midori asks his assistant to get him some tea, as the rookie and the blonde guy are now fighting in front of them. Minado doesn't understand why they're doing this if they're companions, but that's exactly why, to explain to him what anti-prophecy means and to test his abilities. Minado doesn't understand this part about having his abilities tested. The blonde guy keeps advancing, landing kicks on him, and one of those kicks sends him flying. The blonde guy says he'll first explain the origin of the anti-prophecy unit. Minado wonders if that lunatic intends to explain while they continue fighting. The blonde guy asks the rookie's name and he introduces himself. Midori continues sipping his tea. He recalls that the boy was tested at the academy, tested by Midori himself. He fought against an S-rank hunter, and yet he's still being tested, always being tested. Midori asks if that's what his assistant is thinking. She agrees. Since he's a talent personally escorted by Midori, it couldn't happen any other way. As they fight, the blonde guy asks the boy what a hunter's duty is. Minado responds that it's to hunt beasts that emerge from dimensional rifts. Correct, the blonde guy says as he makes Minado dodge another kick. To be more specific, it's like pest control work. But what about the dangers beyond that? The blonde guy wants to know the boy's answer. Minado ponders that for a moment, but the blonde guy says there are more dangers in the world. There are lurking threats far more dangerous than dimensional beasts. The pandemonium 10 years ago with 10,000 demons and the great outbreak 5 years ago. The boy says those events were large-scale escapes from dimensional rifts. The blonde guy almost hits the boy, who defends himself. And he's right. That's what's taught at the academies, and that's what the public believes. But in reality, it's different. The blonde guy just broke a tree with his kicks while explaining things to the rookie. Those two events were invasions from other dimensions. In other words, events of the same nature as the tower that appeared 300 years ago, an emergency situation. Minado hears this and is surprised that two events like the one involving the tower have happened twice. Furthermore, the blonde guy says the invasion isn't over. Someone from another dimension is targeting this world with malicious intent. The blonde guy says they don't know why the Awakened are getting weaker compared to the first generation, and that there are very few people on the same level as the founders. Minado asks what they will do then. The blonde guy says that's why they exist. Those who can predict the future with their abilities and identify the appearance of these dangers only communicate them to the elite to deal with, and the elite is them, the anti-prophecy squad, an organization to prevent the fulfillment of these prophecies, says Minado. It seems he now understands the purpose, and from today the rookie is one of them. He was able to block the blonde guy's kicks in succession and was the first to do so. He is now formally accepting him. He says welcome to the team, Minado, as he extends his hand to the boy. Minado thanks him and accepts the handshake, while Midori claps in the background. The blonde guy tells the other companions that he has accepted the rookie. A group of people appears on the roof and he asks what they will do now. They suddenly disappear and Midori remarks that it looked very much like something a villain would do. The blonde guy says it seems like they want to see things with their own eyes as well. He asks Midori to leave things to him from now on. Confirming that he's sure about it, Midori leaves the rookie in his care. The blonde guy is going to take Minado to his new room and asks to carry his luggage along the way. Minado thanks him and the two head inside the mansion. Night falls and Minado is in what is now his new room, an organization that deals with prophecies. He wonders if the founders had to deal with the same type of crisis that this team does. Something like that must have already been foretold. Minado wonders if he is also fighting against something like that. He feels anxious just thinking about it. Then Samurai appears and says that he can train. The boy notices that some of the founders are there watching him. Samurai apologizes for not speaking with him much lately. The boy is surprised because he thought their true plan was to take over his body. He said that's a very good suggestion and that they're already all in a real battle to achieve it, which frightens the boy. That's how it started, said the samurai, but after observing him exhaustively, they changed their minds. Instead of using his body for their own benefit, training him would be even more more interesting than their previous intention. Back then, when he defeated the poison user, they thought the boy had been able to copy all the special moves even though he'd only seen them once. He was far from executing them at the same level as the technique holders, but the boy had mastered the basics of each one, and they want to know if he realizes how great this accomplishment is, and he isn't sure if it's an effect of the void mark on his hand. But the boy's greatest talent was his learning speed, and that talent is greater than any possessed by the founders. As the boy listened to the samurai's words, his tears began to flow uncontrollably. In the past, the test supervisor had to observe him in every way, and no matter how hard he tried, he kept hearing that he had no talent at all. Until that moment, no one had any positive expectations for him. It was like a constant nightmare in which he was treated like trash. He had already failed the exam 3 times and was a laughingstock, and despite his persistence, they always told him to give up. Even in the filming of that fool's documentary, he was treated like a nobody. No one believed he would have a future like this. And yet he reached a point where his talents were recognized, even having a samurai tell him he has the potential to be the most powerful awakened one who ever lived. All of that was too much for him in such a short time. He cried because he couldn't believe it was normal for someone to feel this happy in life. The people he admired, who he knew only from stories and books, now have great expectations for his potential. In light of this, the samurai comforts him. The souls of all of them reside in the boy's body, and while he sleeps, he'll be able to use the inner space freely without being limited by time or space, and they will give him the equivalent of 100 hours of training every day. During the day, he will train with a group that wants to prevent the fulfillment of the prophecy. But when night falls and he sleeps, more training will happen, this time with the founders. They won't allow the boy to have a peaceful sleep from now on. However, it seems the boy had already made up his mind about it. Indeed, he was very clear on this matter, and he said yes, this would happen. He was counting on each one of them for it. The moon rises in the sky, illuminating the night, and finally, the next day arrives. Blondie seems to be humming some funk tune. Minado is approaching him. He notices the approach and smiles. The guys greet each other, and Blondie says that Minado still looks sleepy. He agrees, saying he's not used to it yet. Blondie says it was the same for him in the first few days, but something about Minado caught Blondie's attention. There was something different in the air around him, so different that it made Blondie react instantly. He threw a kick towards Minado's head, who dodged it with little effort. The boy walks away casually, just asking him not to do that while he's still sleepy and mentioning that he's heading to the cafeteria. Now it's Blondie who doesn't understand anything at all. The day before, he kicked him slowly compared to the kick this morning. Minado is already in the cafeteria, thanking them for his meal. Blondie goes over to him and says that the place he was in is special. At the table, someone is eating a hearty portion of fruit. Blondie asks the girl if they can sit there too. Already seated, he asked Minado to join them. The boy realized that the young woman was one of the companions introduced to him the previous day. She refers to him as Rookie and says that he finally arrived. Minado thought her attitude was a bit unfriendly, so he greeted her and introduced himself. But before he could finish, she said she didn't care and would rather not remember his name. Pointing at him, she said she would only call him by name once she accepted him. It was training, and that day he would be with her to prevent a prophecy. The first book of prophecies was found in 1945 in Antarctica, 3,000 meters beneath the ice. The explorer barely understood what he held in his hands. Book of Ruin was the name written on its cover. The letters looked like scribbles written by a child, and inside it predicted various disasters that would befall humanity. The world decided to believe in those words. Someone in the car asked why they decided to believe in that book, and there was another question too. Minado said he still didn't know the girl's name, but she replied that she wasn't obliged to answer that and wanted him to respond quickly. Minado said it was because the prophecies came true, and she asked if he was stupid or something. She said that if any of the prophecies came true, the world would end. Minado reacted with intense surprise. The boy asked Blondie how many prophecies were in that book. He said around 200. Minado was even more surprised and asked if they didn't already think the world was doomed. And the tough hero said they had already successfully prevented the fulfillment of nearly 180 of them. To Minado's surprise, the boy returned to the topic and asked why humanity decided to believe in that book. And the girl decided to tell him the name of the explorer who found the book. It was Bernard Russell who found it. As soon as he opened the book, he was greeted by what was written on the first page. There was a greeting there directly addressing him. It also stated the day, time, and how he would find that book. In the center of Tokyo, a dimensional rift had opened. Some people guarding the place tried to block the girl's entry, telling her it was dangerous. But before they could realize it, not only she, but all 3 of them had passed by, and Minado asked if everything was okay, to which Blondie replied yes. Continuing, the girl mentioned the Third World War, pandemics, the dark side of the moon, floating trees. All of these are crisis situations, just like the pandemonium avoided by Midori. Though there were a few exceptions in the Book of Ruin, they knew other prophecies were scattered around the world. And to gather all of them and act accordingly, the Anti-Prophecy Division was created. They are classified by their level of destruction, beginning with the destruction of entire regions and ending with the destruction of the world. Minado asked if only they bore the responsibility to prevent this, and she said yes. One of the guards alerted Kisaragi that someone was approaching them. The 3 of them crossed the barrier tape, and someone commented it were just civilians. Kisaragi said that place was very dangerous, and they should leave immediately. But the girl said today's prophecy was rank 3, just a Class B dimensional rift. But it was actually something more dangerous, and the rift was going to open even wider. And immediately the rift began glowing red and cracking, increasing in size. The man there watched the phenomenon with surprise. The rift was huge, and rank A and higher monsters began emerging from it. Rank A left the man astonished, and he called for those present to prepare for battle. He struck a blow toward the monsters. Meanwhile, his subordinates had already become snacks. He realized the situation was serious and that awakened rank B or lower individuals were becoming quick meals. The energy emanating from the rift was equivalent to that of a dungeon boss monster. While trying to hold back the monster's advance, he noticed the girl had approached casually. The three of them were there calmly. Kisaragi extended his hand, concerned, asking the civilians to get away from there as quickly as possible. But the girl used an enchantment. Her hand touched something that reacted as if it were a liquid. After that, an endless array of spears emerged around her. The monsters attacked people while they could. Soon, they were swept away by the spears flying over them. Blondie's foot began to glow with yellow energy. He advanced quickly as if gliding over the ground, kicking the standing monsters. Kisaragi now wanted to know who those civilians were who were more powerful than him, a rank S. The girl told him to get out of there now because the real civilian was him. The guy finally noticed an emblem on their clothes identifying them as a government team. Large hands pushed the dimensional rift from the inside. The girl and Blondie knew the real problem was arriving. That was a beast beyond rank S. The man was worried and asked the girl and Blondie not to attack without a plan, as it was dangerous. But they struck the monster before they could hear him. Blondie noticed his kicks were being deflected by the monster's defense. The spears were also bending. It had perfect defense against physical attacks. The brute headed toward the girl. She condensed something in front of her, as if preparing an attack. Before she could do anything, Minado was already in front of her. The girl hadn't expected this kind of reaction. Minado held the beast with one of his hands, stopping its advance. It remained motionless for a moment, pushing against the boy. But instead of succeeding, its own body collapsed under the force exerted. And before Minado, the beast was incinerated in a massive explosion. The scene was astonishing for both the girl and the man already there. It was even more so. Blondie was dumbfounded by what he saw, realizing that the impact penetrated the beast's defense. His suspicion from the morning was spot on. It wasn't for nothing that Minado had defeated that beast with a single blow. The boy had grown stronger in just one night. The girl was also quite surprised and said Minado's action was unnecessary. Meanwhile, Minado realized that using K to attack a beast with high physical resistance was very effective. He had learned this technique from one attack, the Saint of Fists, while he was sleeping. That was the most basic of basics, a penetration attack. The technique proved to be very useful almost immediately. Looking back, Minado asked the girl a question. He had just saved her, so the least she could do was tell him her name now. She finally introduced herself, saying her name was Shinomiya Akane. Blondie uses his kicks to finish off the remaining creatures. Akane is also using her techniques, launching spears at the monsters. They are struck incessantly. Blondie says it's exactly like Minado said. Akane concludes, stating that destroying the monsters from the inside was much easier. She calls for the rookie, who looks at accounting. The girl says they're going to enter the rift now. The man still there said that it's dangerous inside and that going in is complete madness. Minado excitedly declares he'll go in too. They jump into the rift as if they were heading to an amusement park. The man watches in disbelief. The only conclusion he could reach is that those people were truly incredible, and they belong to that organization everyone's heard rumors about. The monsters charge at them, trying to stop their advance. Akane says these are the same ones they took down outside. There was nothing new about them. They're struck down as if they're nothing. Minado says to Blondie that Akane is very strong, and he replies that she has the most area damage abilities of all of them. A monster larger than the others stands before her. She calls out to Blondie, who's already in front of the beast. He dodges the monster's attack. Blondie was now atop the beast on the ceiling. Descending, he struck it multiple times. Minado, watching from the sidelines, said it was very cool. Before Blondie could realize it, Minado was already beside him. He also struck the beast several times, just like Blondie, who was surprised to be copied. The team continues advancing through the dungeon. Seeing the number of enemies decreasing, Akane suspects they must be getting close. Minado is surprised. Now they're in a massive hall. The three of them instinctively look up because something is there. Something was coming from above, and it felt menacing. That being is enormous, and surely it was what they were looking for. The Minotaur roared intimidatingly at them. This was a monster beyond rank S and extremely dangerous. This is the boss of that dungeon. Akane prepares to launch one of her attacks toward it. The Minotaur is surrounded by the energy of the attack. Several spears start emerging from the ground. They advance toward the Minotaur. Akane says the first rule against a powerful enemy is to use your strongest attack immediately to prevent the beast from counterattacking. She said she's going to use everything she has until she loses consciousness and asks the other two to deliver the final blow. Blondie laughs and says it must be nice to have an ability like Akane's and agrees with her plan. Minado watches, unable to stop being impressed by the attacks of the other two. However, it wasn't enough for that boss. Blondie noticed his comment and looked at Minado. Akane asks the rookie if he has any complaints about her attack. The three are soon surprised as the attack not only was completely ineffective but also didn't prevent the Minotaur from attacking as well. A strong impact caused the ceiling of the place to collapse, and Akane can hardly believe what she's seeing. The Minotaur was standing before them without a single scratch on its body. The three prepare to change their strategy. One of the founding spirits manifests in Minado, admiring the girl's talent. Minado realizes that it's Killick speaking. He said everything about her technique was amazing, and that it was unfortunate that such a young prospect would soon be overpowered. He sees that her idea of attacking right away is interesting if the dungeon boss is at her level, but what stands before them now is not the case. She underestimated the enemy's physical resilience, which is a full 100%. Minado asks what they should do now, because the Minotaur seemed all too comfortable with the situation. Blondie says the target's physical resistance is high, and Akane wishes she had come with someone with magical abilities. Minado had yielded control to the alchemist residing within him, and Akane is surprised. He asked Minado to yield his body as he would show something to that girl. He cast his magic toward the Minotaur. Soon, the Minotaur is being covered by something. Akane wonders how Minado managed to use the same ability as her and what he did. She says physical attacks are useless, but Minado calls her a fool. He said she still has a long way to go to become an alchemist. She has to know how to use substances in 3 different forms, and he made the liquid on the Minotaur boil, causing massive damage to it. Blondie and Akane try to shield themselves from the heat being released. She realizes that instead of using it as an attack, Minado is using it to create thermal energy, a very meticulous process. The spirit within Minado says that he's convinced about him, but would like Akane to become his disciple. The Minotaur had finally fallen, consumed by the heat. The mission for that day was completed with the defeat of the Minotaur. It was Minado who had achieved that. The axe the monster used as a weapon begins to disappear slowly. Akane is very impressed by what just happened, as she thought it was impossible. An awakened one can only use the abilities granted by their mark, and Minado shouldn't be able to use magic, but even so, he does. The boy extends his hand to Akane and asks her to remember him well from now on. She's a bit annoyed but gives in, extending her hand too, affirming that she'll definitely remember him from now on. Blondie is pleased with the boy, who has now been accepted by Akane. Outside, people notice movement in the dimensional rift, which is beginning to shrink. They wonder what could be happening inside. Minado is the first to emerge from the rift. Those outside can hardly believe that the 3 who entered are coming out of the rift. As soon as Akane exits, the rift closes completely. Minado asks if the mission is over, but they still need to report on what happened once they arrive. The man approaches Minado. He bows and thanks Minado for saving him and his men. He doesn't expect the boy to give any details of what just happened, and Akane thanks him for his understanding. But she says that in his report, he only needs to describe the emblem they use and everything will be clear. He agrees and asks them to keep protecting others in times of extreme danger, but Akane tells him not to worry as situations like that are rare. She tells him to return to his life as they may not meet again. In the end, even he agrees that they're the ones who are civilians. Twilight settles over a village. A guard watches the street and an elderly lady walks slowly. Something eerie begins to unfold in that place. The 3 finally arrive at the base and Akane reminds them that the report still needs to be written. Blondie says they're being called to the lab, to Akane's surprise. They go there and Akane opens the door. What they see inside surprises them. The red-haired one is inside, as well as a man with glasses. The redhead remarks that Akane took too long to handle a level 3 disaster. If Minado isn't mistaken, this guy was also at the presentation when he first arrived. Akane tells Shu not to act that way, as he isn't the leader, and Blondie tries to calm the situation. He asks director Kirihara what he wants with them. He asks them to watch a video he has to show sent by the analysis team. There was a glowing fragment of something there. Akane asks what that ember is, and the director says it's a prophecy grimoire. It was found in a volcanic area burned like that. Minado says if it was found in that state, they won't be able to read it. But the director says that with modern eye and X-ray technology, they managed to decipher part of it, although the content is still unclear. However, there is one prophecy in particular that mentions Japan. Akane wants to know if this is an entirely new prophecy. Minado asks Blondie if this is rare, and he says he's never heard of anything like it before. The research department is very good, and they gather information on prophecies from around the world. Even so, a new type of prophecy is unheard of, but this case is special. Shu asks if the 4 of them there will need to investigate this further. And indeed, a mission like that would typically be given to other members, but they are currently absent. The director wants them to take on this mission and will send more details via email, as they need to leave immediately. Minado can't believe they already have another mission. Akane says this happens sometimes, and Blondie adds that he'll soon get used to it. Shu stands up and agrees to the order. He says that he and his 3 subordinates accept the mission, and Akane firmly states that she is not his subordinate. The director tells them to be cautious as the mission's danger level is unknown, and they should await the main force. Minado is a bit apprehensive about his special mission with an unknown rank. Shu suggests they rest as they just returned from a mission, but Akane says she's fine and doesn't need to sleep. However, Minado says he'll take up that offer, and Blondie agrees too, surprising Akame. The 2 soon fall asleep. and Akane struggles to stay awake. But the three end up knocked out. Someone tells Akane to wake up, and she wakes up startled because she's a heavy sleeper. She asks Minado why he didn't wake her up earlier, but he's focused on what's in front of him and asks her to take a look too. Looking over his shoulder, she manages to see. It's noticeably surprising to them. The entire setting had changed. Blondie says the situation is already very bad. Inside the crystals are skeletons, and he says this prophecy is almost coming true. Akane says that it's a large magic circle, and the pillars must be the residents mentioned in the report. Sue says it's exactly like in the past, identical to the disappearance at the Wakayama mansion. A rift to another dimension nearly opened. A crystal begins to shine intensely. Blondie realizes something is happening, and Akane says they need to act as fast as possible. Blondie asks what they should do now. Sue says they'll do the obvious, contain it. Akane says that by doing so, they'd be going against the director's orders, who asked them to wait for the main force. A massive lightning bolt strikes behind them, surprising them. It's Minado, enveloped in energy, and he asks the others if they're ready to go now. Akane and Blondie realize he's even more powerful than he was that very morning. Sue notes that apparently Minado won't be a burden to them. He advances and asks the others to follow. Akane dislikes his attitude and asks him to be less reckless. They're now before the first crystal. One of the founders comments that this is a nostalgic smell. Samurai agrees, affirming they encountered that smell many times in their lives. Under the moonlight, something starts sprouting from the ground. A hand suddenly emerges from the soil. Samurai says that this familiar smell is from a forbidden technique. An awakened named Shujima was the leader of the Dark Magus. He took down many people during peacetime, only to be defeated himself by the Onmyoges. During the process, a village was caught up in the conflict. A man coughs, gravely injured. He knows he won't last much longer, but will still be able to do one last thing. In 1,000 years, he will be able to return. He will consume and dominate everyone and will be hailed as the Demon King. Shujima left behind a forbidden technique, and the magic circle he had drawn would eventually drain lives. Now the mission was to investigate that scorching heat. Shujima was alive, and his threat level was still unknown. He laments that he has been resurrected with so little power, and that the sacrifices may not have been enough. And although 1,000 years have passed, the place remains identical, but that is no problem, for there are living sacrifices nearby. He invokes a technique that repels his attackers. A great red flame emerges. Minado dodges, but he's worried about his companions. The blonde-haired one says they're fine too. Minado asks them to look down. They look, and the blonde sees that there is already a summoning circle exactly where he's about to land. The threat unveils another technique, trapping both the blonde and Akane. Now neither of them can move. Their enemy is someone truly powerful. He looks back and dodges an attack from Minado. The boy keeps attacking, and Shujima keeps dodging, commenting that the boy's movements are not bad, but he is still an amateur compared to him. Soon, Minado is standing inside a magic circle. A massive explosion happens immediately after that. However, Shujima is surprised by the outcome. Minado had escaped from that trap. He descends from above, preparing to launch another attack. A great yellow lightning bolt descends from the sky, but Shujima blocks it with just one finger. Minado observes what just happened. Shujima says this young man is very good. Behind him, Sue prepares to strike with his sword. He uses his skills and is close to hitting him. Soon, several energy swords surround the neck of the threat. They advance to execute him, but the man just smiles. He dodged and mocks Sue, saying he almost succeeded. Sue knew from the beginning that that wouldn't be enough to win and prepares another attack. He drives his sword into the ground, and red lights begin to emerge from the floor. Shujima says it looks like rain and that the boy's ability is creating several swords of light, and he adds that he's not particularly fond of swords. He advances towards Sue to strike. He had struck him with his bare hand and commented that he's the strongest in that small group. Minado observes from afar and says that this threat is simply boundless. He is different and seems as powerful as Midori or the founders. Minado still doesn't know what to do. At that moment, he hears someone's voice. The blonde and Akane had finally freed themselves. They advance towards the battle and tell Minado to join them. Shujima tells them not to interfere and launches an attack in their direction. The blonde and Akane feel the attack approaching, while Sue continues to defend himself from Shujima. Some beasts have been summoned. Akane and the blonde attack them fiercely, but they realize their attacks weren't very effective. The bodies of those monsters are different. They're like the body of the Minotaur they defeated earlier. One of them prepares to attack Minado. The boy takes a deep breath and gets ready to strike as well. Energy is already concentrated within him. Shujima taunts Sue, saying he won't get anyone's help. Shu scoffs at the comment and performs a slashing attack on the threat. Sue says he won't need anyone's help. He remembers telling Shinji to stay away earlier. He alone is more than enough, and the only thing he can trust in this world is his own skill. Shujima smiles and says the boy is right. For Gitu needed no one else and would devour the whole world. Laughing, he unleashes a power that forces Shu to stay on guard. Sue begins to defend himself, realizing he needs to be faster than that. Someone calls out to him as he fights. It's Minado, who is approaching the two. His hand glows intensely as he runs. Shujima doesn't understand why he's there and wants to know about the demonic skeletons. He noticed that one had already been defeated, and a powerful punch strikes him in the face in the process. Shujima is thrown several meters away as if he were nothing. Sue is impressed, and Minado says that fighting that guy alone is reckless. Shujima seems to be getting more and more excited. Minado says they should join forces and defeat him quickly. Sue is surprised by Minado, as their companions are still fighting the monsters, and Minado is already here, having defeated his monster seemingly without effort. He wants to know more about this guy who took down a monster with such ease. But teamwork isn't something he appreciates, and he tells Minado to stay back. He says he doesn't need anyone's help to win this fight. He'll defeat this guy alone without anyone. Shujima suddenly appears and agrees with Sue's words. Preparing to attack them, he says that he too prefers enjoying things alone. Sue strikes one of Shujima's arms, severing his hand with his sword. As a result, Shujima's attack is launched in a haphazard manner. Sue managed to dodge, but Minado was hit. Regenerating his hand, Shujima continues attacking Sue as if nothing had happened. The boy is able to use his sword to defend himself. Off in the distance, a tree is broken. Minado had crashed into it, and his arm is slightly singed. He is looking down, having taken that hit hard. Within himself, he finds himself facing the founders. They say Minado had blacked out, so they called him here. He tries to speak, but notices his arms are injured. He stands and says he needs to get back as soon as possible, but Samurai is firm with him. He says the boy should step away from this fight. Minado doesn't understand those words. Meanwhile, Sue and Shujima continue trading blows. Shujima tells the boy that their ways of thinking are the same. Sue is deep in thought as he can no longer cut him using his skills, and Shujima says they don't need anyone else right now. He will consume everything here. Sue attacks once more, but the tip of his sword is the only thing severed. Realizing what happened, he quickly tries to act. He switches the sword to his other hand to strike again, but Shujima evades. Shujima seems to be enjoying the fight and asks the boy to entertain him a bit longer. Samurai tells Minado to pay attention. Sue is stronger than the other two, yet is ineffective against Shujima. That too is more than Minado can handle right now. One of the founders says that Shujima's power is incredible, and that if more people lived in that place, his resurrection would have been even more powerful. If he manages to consume Minado's life, the danger for the civilians will increase dramatically. The unclassified prophecy, they discovered that grimoire by pure chance. Samurai tells Minado to hand over control of his body to them, but the boy refuses. The founders didn't expect that answer. Minado says this isn't training, it's the real thing. And in the future, he'll also need to overcome challenges with his own strength. He asks them if he's not right about that. The mage is apprehensive about Minado's decision. Samurai can't stop laughing as he likes the boy's courage. Minado had said he would surpass the founders. Then, Samurai tells him to go, to use everything he's learned so far and do things his way. Minado sets off towards the battle, but he stops and looks back a bit. He tells his masters to watch what he's about to do. Then Minado dashes toward the threat. The founders watch him pleased. Shujima asks if the boy still has something to show him. As it seems he doesn't, he attacks him more fiercely. Sue dodges, jumping higher. Shujima takes advantage of the boy having nowhere to go and says the fight will end now. Sue is apprehensive as he's without his sword. He wonders if this is the best he can do. But Minado catches the sword midair with his hand. He says he'll borrow it for now. Sue didn't expect that reaction from the newcomer. He regains his composure in midair, landing on his own feet, watching as Minado advances towards Shujima. The powerful attack was already prepared. It is promptly launched toward them. Minado is using the one-handed fencing style of samurai, and he delivers a clean cut against Shujima's attack. The impact of the attacks creates a great flash, and one of the threat's hands is severed from his arm. He is intrigued by that skill and asks who this boy is. Minado introduces himself, saying he will be the one to surpass the founders. The samurai, watching it all, asks the mage what she thinks about it. She replies that now all they can do is watch and root for the boy. The samurai comments that Minado isn't at all foolish. He suspects the boy must have learned or perfected something new while dozing in the car, and that maybe it could be something that goes even beyond that. Minado is pressing the threat using his sword techniques, while Sue watches him. Minado doesn't let up for an instant. Shujima is apprehensive as the remaining hand he has is starting to get injured. Sue recalls earlier when Minado suggested they fight together and he refused. He's visibly unsettled by what's happening. Minado executes another slash, but Shujima dodges without him noticing, and several energy orbs have already been created. He launches all of them at the boy, but Minado dodges the attack without any difficulty. What he didn't expect is that those orbs would follow him. He tries to dodge again, but they keep coming for him. He prepares to strike at that massive energy. He launches himself into the air deliberately. One of the founders watches this with satisfaction and remembers the time he spent teaching the boy the basics of his techniques. Minado's stance is different now. He pressed against the ground with his strength, lifting part of it in front of him, and he created a stone shield to protect himself from the attack. Shujima notices that his attack has been blocked and tries to redirect the remaining orbs away from the stone. Minado realizes this and prepares to defend once more. Powerful explosions occur, raising a huge cloud of dust. Shujima doesn't know what happened, but soon he sees Minado completely unscathed. The boy recalls something else he learned from one of the founders, and uses the stones in the air to leap toward his enemy. His agility is such that he's already behind Shujima. He delivers a blow with his sword that would be fatal if Shujima hadn't dodged in time. Even so, this cheek was cut superficially. Shujima is intrigued and now believes Minado must be an irregular. In response, he manages to summon a large magic circle beneath the boy. A massive explosion happens suddenly. Minado is engulfed by it but manages to protect himself. He uses one of the stones in the air for support and remembers to stick to the basics, and to use every skill he was taught to the fullest. Now he heads towards Shujima to keep attacking. He passed by him too quickly. Shujima tries to defend himself but is cut a few times in the process. He now knows that the boy has many strengths, but none of them are dangerous enough to take him down. What he doesn't understand is how this boy has so many distinct abilities. The samurai and the mage are very surprised at how Minado flows from one skill to the next. He's perfecting his techniques at a terrifying pace. It's quite impressive, but something is still missing and Shujima notices this too. He uses his forbidden technique. The founders are stunned, as is Akan. She had to dodge at the last second as a gigantic foot descended from the sky. Looking up, she can't believe what she's seeing. A huge grotesque skeleton had been summoned. Shujima was no longer willing to prolong the time of this clash. He was ready to end it as quickly as possible, and the skeleton attacks Minado with one of its hands. The samurai is concerned and wants Minado to escape immediately. Minado stands still, realizing that he really isn't producing enough. He won't be enough even if he gives it his all. He needs more. He remembers the mage's teachings. She told him he needed to go step by step to learn the basics first, and she showed him how to create fire. He also recalled the samurai's teachings on swordsmanship, and that he should forget fear and hesitation whenever he struck, that he should focus only on the enemy's life. He holds his sword with one hand and with the other generates heat. In his mind, he visualizes a singular slash using that technique. Minado assumes an offensive stance surrounded by flames. Neither the samurai nor the mage can believe what they're seeing. He prepares to attack with it. A new technique emerged, the blazing blade, and the skeleton is sliced from top to bottom. Shujima is also struck by the slash. Minado observes the work of his own hands, calmness on his face. The samurai says that people see life in their own way. To him, life is a thread, and he cuts that thread with his sword. Minado remembers when the samurai asked him how he sees life. After delivering his attack, he realized that his enemy's life was like a torch, a foul flame that produces a lot of soot, and he needed something like water to put it out. No, he needed something even more intense. He would engulf it using even more fire, and that's how he delivered the strike with his blazing blade. A single blow cut through everything before him. Shujima can't believe what happened to him. The samurai and the mage can't believe that the boy managed to combine two different techniques to create something new. He effectively merged magic with swordsmanship. The alchemist appeared out of nowhere and said that it was incredible. He's an irregular and can use all those techniques. He thought it was a coincidence, but realizes the boy might go beyond just combining techniques. He smiles while the samurai eyes that odd reaction. The mage says that if what Killick says is true, they underestimated Minado's potential, and she wonders if it's okay for them, the founders, to keep guiding this boy. The samurai says it's fine and asks if she doesn't also want to see the outcome of it, to see how far Minado could go. After that, the boy became slightly breathless and tired. Shujima's pool of blood starts to bubble, and a new body emerges from it, manuing him. Minado looks at him exhausted, and the enemy says that was very dangerous. If it hit his head, he wouldn't have had any chance at all, and he says that now it's the end, but before he can do anything, a sword sweeps across his neck. This time it was Shu who had attacked. Shujima had completely forgotten about him. Shu dealt more blows, slicing the head, then moves over to Minado to help him. He holds the novice in his arms. In his final moments, Shujima recalls a scene from his past. It is he who is comforting someone. He's telling this person to hold on just a little longer until the sun rises, as he'd be able to get some food for his brother. But his brother was too weak and collapses in his arms. He remains there in that state of misery, feeling cold. Above them, on the bridge, people pass by in celebration, and he can't understand why some suffer while others don't. Being alone can be fun, but being lonely is not good. Shujima is finally defeated, and his body slowly disappears. Shu says that he isn't alone, and even if he were completely alone, but before he can finish speaking, something happens behind him. The other two are approaching him now. Akan asks if Minado is alive, and Sue says he is safe now. She's relieved to hear that. The blonde says he's glad everyone's alive, but they should be worrying about something else now. The barrier they were in is giving way, and they don't know if it might suddenly explode. Sue says they could be crushed if it collapses all at once, so they need to attack with everything they have to prevent it. But they are too exhausted and unsure if they can manage it. However, they have no other choice but to try. Minado, who is unconscious, raises one of his hands and points his sword toward the sky. Shu notices that the novice is doing something. The samurai says Minado did well that day, and fondly recalls the boy's enthusiasm. But now he would handle the rest for him. The barrier begins to shatter, and the kids do everything they can to shield themselves. The samurai is using yet another of his secret techniques. Far away, people approach and are worried because the barrier is imploding. They think they arrived too late, and from a distance, they watch a blue flash burst from the barrier. That energy was emanating from Minado's sword. From afar, those who approached watch what's happening. The light of a sword without hesitation qualification, says Shu Makoto, captain of the Su squad. He wants to know who is responsible for this. Midori is on the plane and learned that the rookie was the one who contained that prophecy. He was very happy about it. The most dangerous threat they faced in Japan was rank 2, and Makoto was facing a rank 1 threat at that moment. Midori says that's cool, and that while he was away, some of them grew stronger, and the one who contained that prophecy was the new member who has been with them for just 2 days, Minado. Makoto wants to know from Midori who this boy is. Midori says that the boy is the one who will put an end to all the prophecies. He says that he is the one they've been waiting for all this time. Makoto says that Midori is putting too many expectations on the boy, so Midori suggests that he draw his own conclusions. Makoto asks his friend to return soon, as it would be boring without him, and Midori apologizes. On the radio, someone says that the target is in front of them. A huge figure hovers in the sky, a prophecy with devastating consequences. The plane continues to approach it, and a blue light emerges. The figure opens its eyes and realizes something is happening. Midori tells Makoto to wait for him as he's almost done with what he had to do there. Minado slowly opens his eyes and wakes up in a bed. A woman beside him says that he's finally awake. He asks where he is, and she says that he's in the infirmary of the base. He's been unconscious since completing his last mission. Minado realizes that he lost consciousness, and during that time he couldn't train with the founders. The woman gets up to leave and says he's fine, but if he needs anything, he can just call her. Minado notices that Sue was sitting nearby, and he wonders if Shu had been there the whole time. The boy asks where the other two are, and Sue says that they're training. They were frustrated because they were useless in the last mission, and given other things that happened, the power Minado showed was devastating. The boy didn't understand Sue's comment. Sue approached him and asked who Minado is exactly. In just 2 days, the boy wiped out 2 dangerous threats, the kind of ability he has and the way he combines them. Shu had never heard of anyone capable of that. He wants to know who Minado is, and how he could be as strong as him, but didn't manage to finish his sentence. Makoto just arrived and apologizes for interrupting. He asks if the boy in the bed is Minado. The boy confirms but doesn't know who he is. Sue calls him older brother. Makoto walks past him without showing any reaction. Sue looks a bit frustrated. Minado tries to comment on the two of them, but Makoto is struck with his sword without warning. Sue covers his face at that. Makoto has his sword unsheathed, and Minado is behind him, on the ceiling because he dodged the attack. He asks if that was some kind of test. Makoto says yes and thinks that a normal intern wouldn't have been able to dodge. He says that the boy passed. Minado didn't even understand that, as he didn't imagine there would be more tests. Makoto says he's the captain of the Su squad. By the name, Minado confirms that they are indeed brothers, and he hadn't heard wrong. Makoto says that based on the boy's performance, he would temporarily join his squad. Su saw that his brother was personally recruiting Minado, not even he had been invited to join the squad. Makoto says the introduction is starting and tells Minado to follow him right away. Su is frustrated and clenches his hands so tightly that he hurts himself. A rivalry toward Minado is growing in him. Inside the training room is Lorenho. He and Akane are fighting non-stop, but it seems like they can't make progress, no matter how hard they try. It seems like they never reach Minado's level. A person enters the room and greets them. It's Midori, and he says that they've been training hard. He says that he just returned from Peru and brought them gifts, rugs, and chocolates, but they interrupt him immediately and ask how long he's staying in Japan. He says about a week. They ask him to train them during this time. They don't want to fall behind Minado's abilities. Midori didn't expect that reaction from them, but he listens. He didn't expect those two to be so determined about this. Minado's perseverance has reached them. Midori is very happy about this, and he asks what they think about Shinji. Su says he will join them too. Meanwhile, Minado follows Makoto. The other two didn't expect Shu to join them. The boy says that Minado is being accompanied by Makoto, and that he would be joining his squad as a temporary member. Neither Lorenho nor Akane expected to hear that. Midori realizes that this only happened because he was the one who suggested Makoto meet him. Moreover, Su acknowledges that he's very far from Minado's level. Minado asks what that summary is, and Makoto says it's about their next mission, and they're leaving tomorrow. He asks if the boy is close to Shinji, his younger brother. He can't say for sure because he's only known him for 2 days, but after what they went through, he can't say they're not close. He even borrowed his sword and was watched by him while recovering. After thinking for a moment, he says that yes, they are close. Makoto listens carefully to that answer. Shinji thinks his brother doesn't care about him, and Makoto tells Minado that he does care a lot about his brother. Shinji says his brother didn't even look at him. Makoto says that even now, he couldn't look at his brother's wounds. Shinji says he needs to get stronger to get his brother's attention. Makoto doesn't want his brother to get stronger. He wants him to be safe. Minado thinks that the two of them are quite close. Shinji wants to surpass Minado and get his brother's recognition. The younger one wants to surpass the older one, and Makoto only really cares about his brother practically. Minado thinks they have a very beautiful relationship. The girl says that Su's motivation is something unresolved between brothers, and that he doesn't usually open up too much about his life. And when asked about his brother, he always reacts defensively, saying he respects him. The only thing he wants is his brother's attention. Lorinho says it's a moving story. Shinji now trains even more focused. The Su squad has 3 rules: be quick, be offensive, and overcome your weaknesses. Among the squads is considered the strongest based on their battle techniques. With a maximum of 7 members, always focused on being the elite of the elite. Their targets are level 1 catastrophes or higher. That's what Koriyama heard and said that 90% of their power comes from the captain and the rest are just extras. And since Minado is a temporary member, he shouldn't worry too much because the captain finishes things quickly. He said that Minado should at least listen and stop using his phone, and the boy apologizes. He says he wanted to talk to his friends, but Minado thinks everyone keeps annoying him non-stop. Lorinho and Akane receive messages from him and she gets irritated, thinking Minado is being inconvenient. Lorinho is surprised by the message. Stu is deeply irritated by what he received. Midori asks what happened, and they show him the message. He had sent them tips on how to become stronger, and Midori loved that. He realized that those were extremely relevant pieces of advice for completely different people. He said they had received wonderful gifts, and he asked if they would accept them or refuse. Lorinho and Akane said they would take them. Meanwhile, Shinji says he'll make him regret supplying his enemy. Midori corrects him, saying they are friends. Minado sneezes because they won't stop talking about him. The hooded figure says that from where they are, they can already see. Going to the window, Minado sees several bluish crystals. A rank 1 prophecy, frozen earth. If it continues to expand, the entire earth will freeze irreversibly. This disaster is happening in 17 different locations, and it was very lucky that it appeared in an uninhabited area. Mana, the vice captain, says they can't let it continue as it's advancing faster than the reports indicated. Makoto says this is the closest they can get by helicopter, and that they will descend through the aircraft's cargo access. He instructed them to avoid collateral damage to nearby villages, and to remember the 3 squad rules: to be quick and offensive, and to not forget to overcome their own weaknesses. In the last fight, Minado ended up relying more on the samurai than he would have liked, and as a temporary member of this squad, he could learn a lot. And this time, he's going to finish the mission with his own hands. This was the first rank 1 prophecy he was facing, and on this mission, he will experience the greatest regret of his life. The entire squad is already on the ground, it's still morning, and one of them sneezes due to the cold. It's extremely cold, and one of them says that awakened individuals should have a higher resistance to the cold compared to regular people. The vice captain says the temperature is minus 37 degrees, it's colder here than the reports indicated. The area of investigation is vast, and they will likely have to set up camp along the way. Minado asks Koriyama if the prophecy about this cataclysm was written in any book or something like that. He says no, that it was actually someone from the team who predicted this using a skill. There are many prophecies, but this is the first time they predicted a level 1 cataclysm like this. That's why their squad was selected given the gravity of the situation. The vice captain asks Minado if he's worried about the situation. He says it's normal to feel that way, and it's better than letting his guard down. But he advises Minado not to place too much responsibility on himself. Koriyama agrees, saying the squad is very well prepared. The vice president reprimands him, saying Koriyama is being too relaxed, and he apologizes for his slip-up. No sooner had that happened, and he said he had sensed the presence of enemies through his radar. Minado was quite surprised by the boy's ability. He could tell the direction and even the distance of the enemies. The vice president listens to the instructions and disappears. Minado only notices her absence a bit late. Immediately, she returns and reports to the captain, saying she went to the place where Koriyama said he detected enemies. There are about 30 monsters there, all of them rank higher than this. The captain orders everyone in his squad to annihilate the monsters immediately. As soon as the order is given, they advance toward the position indicated by Koriyama. At the location he pointed out, the squad begins their battle against the beasts. Minado watches their abilities and the fluidity with which they fight, admiring their team performance. They have an excellent and sharp perception of their surroundings and work extremely well as a team at a level completely different from those still in training. No matter how he tries to interpret it, these are the elite fighters against the prophecies. Minado heads to the captain because he wants to participate in the battle as well. Makoto says that enemies ranked S or higher aren't a problem for the boy and that he should attack too. That's what he wanted to hear from the captain. Minado was already stomping on one of the monster's heads with no difficulty at all. The monster sinks into the snow from the impact of the kick. Minado looks to the side because something caught his attention. The vice captain warns them to be careful because there are some very powerful monsters among them. One of them is so fast that it manages to pass through the squad untouched. Flames begin to rise. Minado is using his incandescent blade technique. The monster realizes the heat is going to rise quite literally. It's quickly struck by a wall of fire, cutting it in two. One of the squad members can't help but be surprised by what just happened before their eyes. He looks back and sees Minado, the one responsible for that feat. He didn't expect the boy to be able to wield a fire sword. The vice captain finds that very interesting as it's a powerful skill. Suddenly, a series of light beams pass through the battlefield. Makoto had made his move, and the monsters were cut multiple times without even realizing what happened. After doing that, he managed to identify the source of the blue light he had seen last time. After the victory, they build a shelter that resembles an igloo. They gather inside to rest for a bit. Koriyama says it's pointless, and that the monster responsible for all of this isn't within a 10-kilometer radius from them. The vice captain says they will need to spend the night there because of that. but she wants to know where the captain and Minado are, as they are not inside with them. Outside, Minado is sitting by a campfire meditating. In his fight against the Calamity, he understood what it feels like to combine two skills, and he's certain he can do the same with other skills he's learned. As long as he concentrates, he knows he'll be able to do it. Makoto appears behind him and says the boy is really passionate when it comes to training. His sudden appearance startled Minado. He asked if he scared him. Minado denies it, but the truth is his heart almost jumped out of his chest because Makoto appeared without any warning. Makoto asks if this is Minado's first time camping, and he says yes. Makoto says he wants to smoke, and that he'd like to smoke his cat. Minado doesn't understand that comment and imagines that Makoto must have some kind of issue with illegal drugs. Then Minado realizes that he actually has a cat, and Makoto shows him some pictures of it. He just didn't expect the cat to be so close to him, which made him uncomfortable. The cat is very cute, and Minado asks what its name is. It's Orib Manju, and Minado wonders if the name has any special meaning. In all the photos of the cat, it's staring at the camera. Minado asks if Makoto misses him that much. The captain says not really, since his clothes are always full of fur, the furniture is scratched, and things are constantly covered in hairballs. And that the cat always sheds fur balls, hates excessive touch, and taking care of him is a little difficult every day. The cat is like a person with a closed heart, and it's as cute as his younger brother. Minado wonders if all cat lovers are this strange. Makoto hopes that one day he'll be able to talk to his brother like this. Minado finally understood what the conversation was about and said he's an only child, so maybe he doesn't understand what Makoto was trying to say. He suggested that Makoto should treat his brother the same way he treats his cat. Despite the great advice, the captain didn't expect to hear that. Even so, he agrees with Minado on that point. Now he's distracted with his phone as there are some videos of the cat, and it's really cute. In one of them, Makoto tries to feed the cat, but it attacks his hand. He asks the captain if he usually treats the cat like a baby, and if doing that is easy. Changing the subject, he asks if it would be okay for him to practice with Minado, but the boy doesn't want to. The vice captain finds them and asks them to return to the camp as they'll be leaving early in the morning. The captain responds with a meow to her surprise. That night, Minado and the captain didn't know what would happen next. A man approaches another who is without cold weather clothing and tells him that he could perish. Then he asks if he's an awakened one. He says he has a mission to make the prophecy come true, and that it's a mission of great importance. An awakened one is heading alone to the same mountain. Minado is training with one of the awakened Margit. He says the boy needs to maintain his concentration. Samurai is upset because he wanted today to be a swordsmanship class, but the mage said his day was yesterday. He's quite frustrated about this, and Margit notices that the boy is very focused. He's finally managing to maintain concentration compared to his first lesson with him. The boy said that at that particular moment, he's in the middle of a mission with a very well-prepared and incredible team, and because of this, he hopes to deliver his best. He points his arrow toward the void and fires it using Margit's teachings. The founder praised the boy's progress. That shot was very good. He asked Minado not to forget the sensation of the training, adding that they should wrap up for now. Minado thanks him exhausted. Samurai asks if they finally finished training. He wants to train with Minado until it's time for him to wake up. But before they could train, Minado needed to wake up to continue the mission with the squad. Once everyone is awake, the captain says they should press on, because this is the day they will find the monster responsible for the prophecy and defeat it. It's already the second day of exploration in that place. They identified enemies about 150 meters ahead, approximately 20 of them. The vice captain orders them to split up and engage in combat. One of the founders says this seems to be an easy mission to accomplish. Another says that Minado is surrounded by powerful people, and that this mission shouldn't end as badly as the last one. The mage looks at Methuselah and asks what's wrong. The old man seems a bit uneasy about everything. Something about it doesn't feel right. One of the subordinates informs the captain that they cleared the region of monsters, and he commends their efforts. The captain asks Koriyama for updates, and he reports that 2 kilometers away, there's a strong energy signature, likely the boss. And not only that, but it was heading toward them. They had less than 10 seconds before contact, but before he could recalculate, the monster had already arrived. The monstrosity stood before the squad, and its difficulty level was completely unknown. The vice captain recognizes that this one in particular is much more dangerous than any of the superior S-rank monsters they've encountered so far. They charge into the attack, and one of their techniques manages to immobilize it for a moment. The vice captain attacks, followed by the others in a coordinated assault. A massive flame strikes the boss, but even with such a powerful attack, there wasn't even a sign of damage. The combination executed by the squad was completely ineffective. From above, another prepares to attack the boss directly. It's Minado. He recalls Skemurei's teaching to hesitate not and focus solely on the enemy's life. He also remembers Akane's advice to strike with his most powerful attack. With his flaming sword, Minado believes he will be able to execute an excellent attack with his strongest technique. He swings the blazing sword toward the boss, but he's quickly surprised by the outcome of his attack. All he managed to do was leave a small, scorched mark on one of its arms, and now he needed to defend against the attack coming his way. The force of the strike was so great that it sent him flying away from the scene. Koriyama is worried and asks if Minado is still alive, and the boy realizes the outcome could have been disastrous if the snow beneath him hadn't been soft. The boss is truly very powerful, which is why the prophecy is ranked 1. They are now entirely depending on the captain. He knows this and is prepared to step into action. Koriyama pulls Minado out of the area as they are not engaging in the fight to avoid hindering the captain. The boss raises one of its swords, preparing an attack, and directs it at the captain. Minado is concerned about Makoto's safety, but the attack wasn't effective, and the captain seems to have understood something, to the monster's surprise. He stopped the blade using only the tip of his sword and remarked that the monster is indeed very strong, and nothing more. Minado is quite astonished by the captain's strength. Koriyama says everything is resolved, and the vice captain adds that this is why they describe that squad as a one-man army. The boss attacks the captain again, but he defends himself effortlessly with his sword. With a single blow, he slices off 2 of the monstrosity's arms. Samurai remarks that he's not bad for an awakened who was born in such a talent-poor era. He wants to do that too and speaks to Minako, but the boy doesn't want to yield his body now. The captain says he wishes everyone in his squad could defeat a monster as strong as that, but for now, he'll finish it off without delay. The vice captain forms a barrier around them to protect them from the captain. He uses his ability, Red Dragon of the Emperor. Flames engulf the area, and if not for the barrier, they would burn even his allies. He prepares to attack again. The flames advance toward the boss, and a great corridor of fire is formed with the swing of his sword. Minado is impressed by what he sees. Meanwhile, the monster writhes in agony, with a deep cut across his body. Minado notices that the captain also wields a flaming sword, but his is incomparably stronger than Minado's. Without the barrier, they'd be ashes. The captain's immense power is terrifying. He says it's their job to protect the world while thinking of his cat, adding a meow at the end of the sentence, which embarrasses the vice captain and makes Minado realize he's a slave to his cat. The captain's sword technique is different from Samurai's, and it's many levels above Minado's. It's truly incredible to witness, and he can't wait to learn even more from the captain. With one more strike, the monster is finally defeated. The squad members begin celebrating their victory, but drops of blood start flying through the air. The captain's arm had been severed. He realized he had been attacked and looks toward the source of the strike. Koriyama had also been hit, but fatally. Minado realizes what just happened. The other squad members had also been attacked by someone. Minado tries to help Koriyama, who is fatally injured. But Koriyama pushes the boy away while he still can, only to be struck by more attacks. Minado watches helplessly as the scene unfolds before his eyes. Koriyama is disappointed that his radar wasn't able to detect this attacker. He tries to apologize to his captain as his life slips away. Still, he believes his captain will be able to handle this, and he trusts that the captain now knows where their enemy is. Makoto is utterly enraged at this point. Other squad members begin to fall one by one. The captain orders the survivors to find cover in the terrain as they're being targeted by a skill-based attack. 2 bodies lie motionless on the ground. The vice captain is distressed, fearing they've already lost 2 of their members. One of them notices that the captain's arm had been severed from his body. This ability bypassed even the barrier. Its characteristic must be to annihilate everything it touches. Makoto seems to have identified something and dashes toward it. The vice captain is worried because he's too injured to keep fighting, and the boss they had apparently defeated had regenerated. She realizes the survivors will need to deal with this and asks if Minado can still move. She looks at him and the boy is frozen, unresponsive. He's in shock, unable to comprehend what happened there, wishing for someone to save or revive them. But one of the founders apologizes, saying there's nothing they can do. They are incapable of bringing the dead back to life. Minado hears these words with great difficulty, struggling to accept them. He speaks to all the founders, who are with him. In the fight against Calamity, he ended up relying on Samurai's strength once again, and he vowed that this time he would complete the mission with his own strength. He apologizes and pleads with them to help him now. Samurai understands the plea and agrees to assist him. Minado's hair begins to change color once again. The captain knows the attack came from beyond his friend's range, meaning it must be more than 3 kilometers away. A single attack struck Koriyama, pierced the barrier, and severed his arm. The enemy is as strong as he is, that much is certain. Makoto usually suppresses his own power so his squad can develop their abilities. With his speed and vision, he can easily reach a distant position with great precision, even if there are obstacles between him and the enemy. He's remembering Koriyama, Hizano, and his other comrades now. He won't let their deaths be in vain. As soon as he reaches the enemy, he unleashes another powerful attack. A massive energy orb begins to crack. The attacker is surprised to have been located so easily, but admits it's what he expected from the captain of the squad. Makoto notices that the flames from his attack were absorbed by something. The attacker remarks that if Makoto had both arms, he would already be defeated. But even so, this is merely conjecture. The attacker then strikes with spheres of dark energy. Makoto braces himself to mount a defense. He carves a hole through the snow, and moments later he's behind the mysterious man, striking cleanly at his nape. But his sword was severed and Makoto was injured again, this time in his abdomen. The man comments that he expected to be decapitated by the attack, but it's Makoto who is now dangerously close to finding out if there's bread in heaven. Makoto, furious, attempts another strike at the man. The man dodges and remarks that it's useless, kicking Makoto in his fresh wound. Makoto starts questioning himself. He then strikes the mysterious man with the hilt of his sword, sending him flying. He demands to know why the man went easy on them, as he ceases attack after only a few strikes. That ability to destroy everything is extremely powerful, no matter how it works, and the man shouldn't be able to use it continuously. The man gets up and says the same applies to Makoto, but he points out that they're not in the same position now. Makoto is significantly injured and at a great disadvantage because of it. Makoto musters his strength to declare he isn't at a disadvantage. He recalls the start of this mission with his squad. They have 3 rules they always follow. Surrounded by flames once again, he remembers the 3rd rule. The man realizes Makoto cauterized his wounds to stop the bleeding. The 3rd rule is to overcome your own weaknesses. The attacker suspects Makoto is burning his own life force in this final attack, so he decides to do the same. Makoto thinks of his comrades and wishes they could see him now. His squad should never be underestimated. Even with his sword broken, Makoto ignites his own will, overcoming his weaknesses. He emanates an aura as he releases the scarlet flame of the red dragon from the God Emperor. On the other side, arrogance dominates, shrouded in an intense darkness that forms spheres. We return to Minado, calling out to all of them with a shaken expression, pleading for help. Then, as the samurai confirms his resolve, Minado's hair begins to turn white. Meanwhile, we see the rest of the squad struggling to face Commodus. The vice captain knows this creature is far too strong, and they won't succeed alone, yet she still looks at Minado, shouting for him. Thinking about how difficult this must be for him, after all, he was just an ordinary person until one day, he became a hunter, joined the anti-prophecy squad, and witnessed so much death, it's understandable. However, as she ponders this, she notices him rising. In an instant, he appears behind her, delivering a shining golden kick that destroys Commodus, reducing it to mere golden dust. 2 squad members stare as Minado walks away, and we see all the souls following him, telling them to leave the rest to them. The scene shifts back to Su's battle, where he begins launching fiery slashes at the blonde one of darkness. While dodging, the blonde admits it's becoming harder as the flames surpass his darkness, pushing his limits of control. In a desperate move, he throws 2 spheres in quick succession, expecting Su to counter with another slash. However, Su simply dodges and uses the opportunity to advance, slicing off the blonde's arm. Su declares the tables have turned, but he takes a knee strike directly to the gaping wound in his stomach. Su collapses as the blonde remarks that Su won't be able to do much with just one arm, not to mention the hole in his stomach. He explains that he knew Su would opt for close combat after the attack, given his strength and tendency to make the best choice, but that makes him predictable, and that's why he'll lose. Most importantly, the blonde claims Su was already destined to lose according to a book he produces and displays. Su is stunned, realizing it's a book of ruin, the same as the ones they possess. Finally, the blonde explains that just as there's a group trying to stop prophecies, there's another trying to fulfill them, and he is one of the 12 apostles of the apocalypse. Number 12, darkness. He concludes by saying he will fulfill the prophecy of destruction. Shu asks why, while secretly reaching for his hidden sword. As number 12 begins asking if Shu would forgive him if he revealed the truth, Su surprises him with a direct slash from chest to ear, taking a chunk of his body with the flames. Su begins to believe he can win. The blonde is already weak and his body will soon tire. He shouts that victory will be his as he ignites his sword. The blonde warns that it ends now as he takes a small vial with a saintly figure as the stopper and opens it. A blinding light emanates, forcing Shu to look away, and he is then struck by a punch that hurls him into an ice pillar. Shu stares, questioning how the blonde's arm is intact, while the blonde takes the opportunity to explain. It's an artifact, precious but necessary to use since he's fighting the captain of the squad, Su. Su attempts a flaying slash, but the blonde counters with 4 spheres of darkness to block it. The captain questions whether countries are failing to regulate the use of such items, as no organization should have free access to them. After defending, the blonde delivers a kick to Su's stomach. The scene cuts to a moment later, with Su already collapsed, nearly dead on the ground as the blonde towers over him. Su continues reaching for his sword, thinking about his family, friends, and team, especially recalling his promise to Minado to treat Shinji as he treats the cat. Smiling, he reflects on how Minado was right. Before he can finish his thought, remembering his cat and brother, he grips his burning sword, igniting it as he rises. But as he begins an attack, his hand, along with the sword, is obliterated by a sphere of darkness. He is left stunned as number 12 bids him farewell, sending multiple spheres toward the kneeling Su, who is thinking of Shinji. But the assault halts as an explosion resounds behind the blonde. A massive ice hill splits in half, revealing Minado's approaching figure, his hair completely white, as all the souls within him speak in unison, asking if it was the blonde who made their disciple cry. Su stares, wondering if it's really Minado, but he concludes it's not based on the aura Minado is exuding. He realizes even number 12 has noticed the terrifying aura surrounding Minado. It's no longer that of prey, but someone to truly fear. Number 12 begins shouting at Minado not to move or he'll kill Su. preparing his dark spheres. However, before he finishes speaking, his arm is severed. Shocked, he wonders how this happened since he never took his eyes off Minado. Minado is holding a broken sword while the samurai comments that it's a dull blade. The wheelchair-bound spirit beside him remarks he hadn't expected it to break in one strike, yet Minado continues using Trimagistus to transform weapons for them. Finally, the spirit tells everyone to show number 12 what hell looks like. As number 12's arm regenerates, the samurai questions how this is possible. It's explained to him that it's a reversal technique, something someone from the modern era shouldn't be able to use. It's likely enabled by the artifact number 12 carries, and it will continue until the artifact's effect expires. However, the artifact likely has a limit on how many times it can regenerate. As soon as the explanation ends, number 12 is struck in the forehead by an arrow shot by Minado, controlled by another founder. Number 12 regenerates again as the founders discuss how to overcome this. They conclude the only way is to kill him until he stays dead. The blonde attempts to form a shield with his dark spheres, but Minado fires 3 arrows straight at him, 2 piercing his chest and 1 his eye. As number 12 regenerates, the founder taunts him, asking if he really thought he wouldn't hit with so many openings. Number 12 finishes regenerating and begins launching dark spheres at Minado. Possessed by another founder, Minado dodges all of them, closes in, grabs number 12 by the arm, and delivers a barrage of blows to his face. While doing so, the founder notes he's finally understood. The dark spheres annihilate everything they touch and are great for offense. But if the user can't see, they can't aim or attack. Dodging them becomes simple. Minado continues pummeling number 12 before throwing him aside. The founders, meanwhile, discuss among themselves how many times number 12 has died but admit they've lost count. Minado's body approaches Sue, still kneeling on the ground. Sue asks if it's really Minado, but the founder denies it, using the preservation ability to stop Sue's bleeding and keep him alive. The founders reveal themselves to be spiritual heroes competing for control of Minado's body. However, they quickly declare they don't have time for further explanations and leap away, leaving Sue to ponder their words. We then cut to number 12 regenerating after being thrown, wondering if his darkness is really so easy to dodge. He calls Minado a monster while desperately trying to think of a way to win. Before he can act, Minado, controlled by another founder, pierces his heart with a lance, pinning him to a wall. The founder muses whether this would make him die permanently. However, number 12 regenerates and drops to the ground again. This time, another founder's power manifests. With a downward kick, number 12's body is obliterated. The founder derisively calls him annoying and wonders if they simply need to destroy his body completely. Number 12 regenerates yet again, starting from just a hand, and begins fleeing. He decides he must kill Sue Makoto and leave the area. But as he approaches Sue, he realizes Minado is already there, warning him that he's too late. The sword founder tells Sue to pay close attention as Minado begins slashing number 12 repeatedly. The blonde reflects on how he swore his life to fulfilling the prophecies and thus has no fear of death. Yet now, in the face of this monster, the fear of death returns, a terror he thought he had lost. Desperate to counter it, he pulls out a vial of sand. As his arm is severed again, the sand pours toward Minado, revealing itself as the artifact, the Cage of Time's sand. Minado becomes surrounded by the cage as number 12 declares that the regeneration effect has ended. Even without his arm, at least he managed to activate it before his limb was severed. The founders argue about how to deal with the cage, but prioritize the fact that number 12's regeneration has stopped. Number 12 gloats that not even his darkness can destroy the cage, so they can't kill him. He announces he'll be leaving the area. However, before he can finish speaking, the sword founder, Samurai, reminds him that he told Sue to pay attention. The blonde turns, panicked, as behind him Sue Makoto, still injured, glares at him. We shift our perspective to Sue's memories, recalling Midori complaining about never being able to beat him in a sword fight and suggesting that he should look for a master. Taking the advice, Sue sought not just one but multiple masters. However, each one of them in their own way reached their limit and had nothing more to teach him. All of them gave up on teaching him within a month or less, until he met his final master, Hinoki Ichika. She was the only one who managed to train him for an extended period, 3 years. Sue remembers asking her about a technique that even she had not yet fully understood, a technique that only the Hinoki samurai had ever executed. She told him that she had nothing more to teach him, as he had already mastered the one Hinoki hand style. He asked how he could become stronger, but not even she had an answer. His talent was immense, and despite all the training he had undergone, he was still far from blooming to his full potential. She told him he could either continue searching for another master or remain as he was, but blossoming would be difficult either way. However, she assured him that one day he might encounter a stronger swordsman and learn from their movements. She advised him not to waste any moment. As Sue recalled this, he watched Minado's movements and silently thanked his master for helping him finally understand and seize an opportunity. We see most of the founders watching Sue, some wondering what he would do next, while Minado was shocked by his condition. Shu's energy emanated like an aura alongside Minado's. Even in the anti-prophecy training wing, Minori felt the aura and wondered if this was Sue's power. Acting on impulse, Minori charged forward, breaking through the wall and creating a hole in the middle of the training room, leaving everyone inside stunned. Back on the battlefield, only one thought passed through Doze's mind: confusion. The swordsman in front of him should not have been capable of doing anything. Su's body was entirely battered yet prepared. Somehow, Doze knew he was going to be cut. The samurai spoke to Minado, explaining that people are like flowers. They are only capable of showing their full potential for a brief moment, whether it happens at the peak of their strength with perfect technique or when they achieve the truth. For Su, that moment was now. He urged Minado to remember this moment forever. Minado, astonished, watched as Su's presence grew. It was like a flower about to bloom. As Su raised his arm, his presence became increasingly tangible and powerful. Meanwhile, Doze attempted to create a shield of dark spheres, but with Su's complete blooming, he unleashed the lost technique of the one Hinoki hand style, Indomitable. Executing a slash without a sword or hands, Su cleaved the Apostle of 12 and 2. Even Doze was bewildered, unable to comprehend how Su had managed to cut through him despite his protection and the absence of a weapon. So close to fulfilling the prophecy, Doze died. We see him split vertically in two as the samurai congratulated Su. The sword that had existed only in Su's mind became real. Despite the stormy, rain-laden clouds, Su could see beyond the sky. Reflecting on the swordsman he had become, Su thought about how blessed he was to have a family, a friend, companions, and subordinates. Even if this was his end, he could only apologize to his brother, feeling fully satisfied in this moment. Su thought of Minado, and as they clasped hands, he realized that death was not the end. He could still leave his legacy for the next generation. Su expressed his gratitude aloud as Minado stepped out of the cage and walked toward him. Minado felt a connection to Su through his crest, but was interrupted by a crude green beam of energy. Midori arrived, shouting for Su and rushing to catch him before he fell. Holding Su, Midori realized that Su Makoto, at the age of 23, had died in combat against Doze. Midori questioned why Su had to die like that, recalling a moment when he had previously asked Su why he had become a captain. After all, Su would have been better off acting alone, given that apart from Midori, Su was the strongest among them. Su responded that it was typical of Midori to think that way about not fighting as part of a group. Midori began to ask whether it wasn't important for Su to shine brighter than a star, but before Su could answer, someone called him from another room, informing him that Kuzushiro had passed the test to become a level 2 swordsman. They celebrated the achievement, excited that Kuzushiro could now assist them, and decided to go out for a celebratory meal. Su simply confirmed, telling Midori that he had companions, and that even if he ended up getting hurt, he would still leave a legacy for them. Finding these people had been his greatest happiness. Back on the battlefield, Midori, in tears, said that all of Su's comrades had witnessed his accomplishments and 2 of them were still alive. He tearfully declared that Su still needed to fulfill his duty as a leader, gently closing Su's eyes with his hand to let him rest. We see Minado collapse on the ground, and the narrative transitions into his subconscious. The founders faced Minado, who was isolated and questioning why the environment around him was darkening. This was because Minado blamed himself for his own weakness. The founders, too, had experienced similar moments. They had lost family, friends, and close allies. Their hearts had been broken, and they had seen people turn their backs on them. In most of those instances, they had been unable to act with their shattered hearts. One of the samurai founders approached Minado, calling out to him, but Minado interrupted, saying he didn't want to fight anymore. As if his heart had been shattered, he lamented that if he had let the founders fight from the beginning, none of this would have happened. He declared that it would be better for everyone if he became just a vessel for all of them. The founders tried to speak again, but Minado cut them off, saying he already knew. Yet, the hand that had clasped Su's now burned like fire. Su had placed his trust in him, and Minado couldn't waste the legacy Su had left behind. He continued, stating that he no longer just wanted to surpass the founders, he wanted to overcome the pain as well. The internal world turned back to a bluish hue as the founders smiled, recognizing his determination. Minado concluded by vowing not to let anyone else die. With resolve in his eyes, he faced them all, and the scene advanced forward in time. We see them already walking out of the icy terrain toward a helicopter, with Midori carrying Su's body. He seals the body in a cadaver bag, and the pilot announces that they can return now that all the bodies have been recovered. Midori states that he will go back alone. As everyone else begins to leave, Midori stays behind, pulling out his phone and calling Mikado. He informs Mikado that Su is dead, and that their enemies are the 12 apostles of the apocalypse. He adds that the paperwork can wait. First, they will hunt them down. It is then revealed that Midori disappeared after this. We fast forward 1 month after this event to the Nagano prefecture on Mount Mitak. Minado was training with Shinji using Aikido to gain the upper hand, nearly finishing with a golden kick, but they are interrupted by a woman shouting that it's enough. This woman is Su's former master, Hinoki Ichika. The story cuts to the funeral of Su's squad, an event that left a deep scar on the anti-prophecy group. It particularly affected Shinji, who stood frozen in front of a photo of Captain Su. After some time, Minado encounters Shinji in the hallway carrying Oribe. Shinji is visibly in poor shape, with heavy bags under his eyes. He accuses Minado of knowing about the cat and confesses that he didn't know anything about his own brother. Shinji explains that he didn't know about the cat living in Su's room, the books he read, the clothes he wore, or even his thoughts. until he saw these things for himself. Only then did he realize how little he knew. Minado notices the diaries and Shinji says he's taking them with him. The diaries, he explains, are messages left behind in case Sue died on a mission. Each diary contained records of training, missions, and small details. In every entry, Sue would end with a note wondering if his brother was doing well on that day. He wrote about Shinji passing the hunter's exam, joining the anti-prophecy, and even about bringing a watermelon for Shinji. Small, simple things. The last entry expresses Sue's concern about Shinji going on a reconnaissance mission after a disaster. In this moment, we see Shinji crying in his brother's room before speaking to Minado. Minado reassures him, stating that Sue always spoke about Shinji and Oreb. Shinji begins to tear up and says that he wants to become stronger so that his brother doesn't have to worry about him in heaven. This resolve led both Minado and Shinji to seek out Sue's former master, Inoki Ichika, to inform her of Sue's death in combat. She was left in shock but agreed to train them, helping them become stronger. We return to the scene of their training session, with Inoki telling them that they have grown stronger. She praises Shinji's remarkable improvement, but when Minado asked about himself, she says that she should be learning from him because she has nothing left to teach. Despite this, she throws swords to them and calls for a sparring session. As they exchange blows, Minado can only think about how he is becoming the strongest awakened one, but his thought is interrupted as the perspective shifts to another location. We move to London, England, where a man is walking through the city. Someone asks him if he is one of the 12 apostles of the apocalypse. The man confirms this, welcoming Midori. Midori demands to know where his allies and the base are. He warns the man that if he lies, he will die. The man responds, telling Midori not to be so impatient. They should play a little first. However, before anything else can happen, we see Midori walking out of a blood-soaked alley, stating that he warned the man he would kill him. A man is holding 5 prophecy books in his hands, while Midori coldly tells him to move on to the next one. We see an elderly woman within the anti-prophecy organization in a secret location known as the Eternal Vision Cabin. She asks if the books in front of her belong to Midori. This woman is Ju, the chief executive superintendent, and she is accompanied by her assistant, Shinanum Tenjin, who confirms that the books are prophecy records from the 12 apostles Midori has hunted down. Another assistant, Kitamori Shiki, adds that the books are fragments of a single, larger book that was divided. Ju comments that taking the books and eliminating the apostles isn't the issue. The real problem is Midori acting alone. Sue's death appears to have left a deep scar. One of the assistants asks what should be done, but Ju simply says to leave Midori alone as he wouldn't listen to them anyway, and to offer him tea when he returns. Tenjin shifts the topic to the consequences of Sue's death, noting that they now need to fill the void left by his squad. Out of the organization's 8 squads, only Sue's has been disbanded. Both assistants suggest creating a new squad to replace Sue's. The scene shifts to Tokyo, where a rank 2 prophecy called Rebellion is unfolding, initiated by their leader, the Nameless Fallen God. A group of hunters struggles in battle, complaining that even one opponent is hard to handle, as each has unique weaknesses. Meanwhile, Captain Hibiki remarks on their weakness and instructs Akane to take care of them. Akane agrees. Using the magic Trismegistus, she creates gas and liquid combined with flames to form molten metal. This hot liquid encases their heads, compressing and piercing them with spikes, causing them to turn on each other. Finally, she incinerates them, declaring the task finished. Captain Hibiki praises Akane for performing 4 types of attacks with a single ability and commends her as extraordinary. She expresses regret that Akane is only a temporary member and invites her to join her squad after training. Akane says she'll think about it, while the other squad members gossip about how much the captain wants to recruit her. They agree that Akane's strong, kind, and cute personality would be a great addition to the team. Akane runs off and calls Minado, informing him that she has completed the lesson on controlling the 3 states of alchemy and asking for her next assignment. They move to Mount Mitek, where Minado is playing with Oribe. He consults the founder of alchemy, who confirms the next lesson for Akane. Minado relays the instructions to her, promising to guide her further. Meanwhile, Heiko is engaged in his own battle against a prophecy, a divine beast called the Sky Devourer. He successfully lands a light kick, defeating the Sphinx-like boss. This earns him applause from the squad captain, Todoroki Kuchiro. The squad members celebrate, tossing Heiko into the air while asking him to join their squad. Back to Akane, she declares that she won't be left behind and vows to surpass them all. Minado mentions that Shinji is also getting stronger, expressing his happiness about this. Akane blushes shyly at the compliment. Shinji tries to pull Oribe off Minado, but Akane changes the subject, mentioning rumors of a new squad being formed to replace Sue's. She adds that the new captain will be chosen based on recent achievements. Heiko laughs and says the new captain won't be a problem because he heard they're planning to call the new unit the Kanaji Squad. He finds it amusing until the realization hits him him. His laughter stops abruptly and he asks for clarification, then starts shouting in disbelief. He questions why he should be the captain, and she explains that within the anti-prophecy, there is a deep desire for an existence capable of eradicating all prophecies. More than that, it's a desire she herself shares. To fulfill that wish, they need someone strong enough to lead a squad and carry out this mission. That's why they want him as the captain. Minado is surprised, but she tells him they'll discuss it later and leaves. We follow Minado to a rock in the middle of the sea, where he sits deep in thought about becoming a squad leader. Ichika asks Shinji what Minado is doing out there. Shinji responds that he's contemplating the idea of leading a squad. Ichika remarks that if Minado wants to, he can do it, and Shinji agrees, believing Minado is the right person for the role. They watch him silently, while within Minado's emblem, the founders discuss whether they have any advice for him. None of them do. They all dedicated their lives to being the best masters in their fields, but leadership is foreign to them. The founder of Magic quips about their uselessness as teachers and shifts the responsibility to Ryan, a military strategist founder. Ryan, however, refuses, stating it's not his time to speak and that there's someone else better suited for this. Outside, a wooden sword is embedded in a stone. Ichika yells at Minado to stop wasting time and train with her. She orders him to use his quick steps. Minado leaps from the rock, running on water. Ichika tells him to attack her with everything he has, noting how strange his skill level is for someone awakened only 6 months ago. The samurai founder helps Minado maintain his footing on the water, showing him the technique. Minado instinctively dodges Ichika's strike as she shatters the rock with her blade. Ichika tells him she doesn't care how distracted he is. She'll force him to focus. The founders discuss Ichika. Ryan admits she's strong for a current-era awakened fighter, which is unsurprising given that she's a descendant of the sword founder. However, Ryan clarifies she's not his descendant, but likely from his brother's lineage since he never had children. They note that Ichika trains Sue, and back in reality, she uses the Celestial Fall, a Hinoki one-hand style technique, attacking Minado relentlessly. This pleases the sword founder. Ichika praises Minado for his evasiveness, noting how his use of the one-hand technique resembles the founder's own. She guesses what's on Minado's mind, saying he's probably wondering if he can ever be as strong as Makoto. Shinji starts to worry that Minado is being too hard on himself. Minado reflects on how amazing Sue was as a captain and questions if he could ever match him. While he's lost in thought, Ichika interrupts, telling him he doesn't need to be like Sue. Summoning a water typhoon, she performs the Hinoki-style Tengu dance. Ichika explains that this technique was developed by her master using the Hinoki style as a base. She admits they're not as strong as the founder, but continue to stand and train daily to one day reach that level. She says Minado will have to train every single day to achieve the same. Ichika also mentions she doesn't know what kind of captain Sue was, but just thinking of him makes it clear how great he must have been. She reassures Minado that he doesn't need to start by being like Sue. He can grow into that role and even surpass him. She directly asks Minado if he agrees with her and advises him to focus on what he has now rather than striving to mimic someone else. Minado reflects on this and affirms it's about the future, remembering Sue's handshake. Ichika cheers and shouts for him to keep training for the future as they engage in a sparring match. 2 weeks later, at the Anti-Prophecy's headquarters, several captains are reviewing the list of candidates for the new squad. The superintendent's assistant confirms all have been approved. The assistant remarks that the candidates this time are unusual, while glancing at Ichika and Minado's files. Not far away, hidden in a tree, a girl with green hair holds a prophecy book belonging to the apostles. Speaking on the phone, she reports that she has successfully infiltrated the organization. She notes that the squad captain test will take place in 3 days and declares that she will be the captain of this new squad. This girl is Eva, a member of the 12 apostles of the apocalypse. It is explained that her celestial demon ability allows her to replace the existence of those she has killed, and her goal is to become the new leader of the new anti-prophecy squadron and sabotage the organization from the inside. She thinks about how Midori is on a killing spree against the members of the 12 apostles. So far, he has already killed more than half of them, and she knows she won't be able to defeat that monster alone. The only way to act is by sabotaging the organization and, in the end, fulfilling the prophecy. But let's fast forward to 3 days later, during the test with the assistant of the superintendent warning them to enter in a straight line. The test to determine the new squadron leaders is about to begin, and there will be 4 tests, with only 4 candidates advancing to the final phase. The exam will be based on points, where the first place will receive 3 points, the second place will get 2 points, and the third place will earn 1 point. In the end, the candidate with the most points will be elected as the captain of the new squadron. During the test, the superintendent will be observing them and advises everyone to give their best effort. Everyone confirms while our protagonist starts to think about how many candidates there are and how all of them are staring at him. There are a total of 8 candidates, and we begin to see their conversations and introductions. The first one is Koki Haruki, who asks if Minado is the strange one that Midori brought. The second one asks if Minado really wants to become a captain after joining only 2 months ago. This is Akina Seshiro. The third asks if he's really not that amazing, and this is Sono Koromo. The fourth one asks if he really has only been there for 2 months, and this is Hizaki So. The fifth one says it's interesting since Minado returned alive from a level 1 prophecy, and besides that, he was recommended by Hinoki herself. This is Sakazaki Fisuke. The sixth one mentions that he heard Minado has even taught his own friends, and this is Shikami-en. The seventh one asks if Minado isn't just another kid like him, and this is Jiryu Kanam. One of these candidates is Evo, one of the 12 apostles. Minado is thinking about how everyone is accompanied by their squadron captain, but Ishika couldn't come because she slept too much. However, she warned him that if he loses before she gets there, he's screwed as he'll be thrown into a volcano. He thinks that every time she says something like that, she follows through, so at the very least he won't let himself be eliminated before she gets there. The starting signal is given, and we switch perspectives to Ichika, riding on Shinji's back as he runs toward the training field for the exam. She tells him to hurry up, saying this will all be over soon. We move directly to the test, where Minado wins the first round and takes first place in the mana measurement test. One day, he had already broken the mana measurement device a few times, and everyone finds it impressive. They explain that this sometimes happens when someone is a genius in physical strength or mana, so they assumed his specialty must be magic. The one with glasses, Sakazaki, tells Shikami that they seem to be opposites. The assistant then announces that the next test will be a hand-to-hand combat round. The participants will face off against other contestants, and to win, they will need to earn 2 points. Before announcing the first contestant, Shikami raises his hand and requests to fight Minado. Shikami is the strongest regular hand-to-hand combatant of the Todoroki squadron. He is also considered irregular because when he was 2 years old, he was caught in an outbreak of monsters from another dimension. Even from a distance, while still in a baby stroller, he killed all the monsters and protected his mother. The captains comment on the match and criticize the Todoroki captain, saying it's practically cheating to send a hand-to-hand combat specialist against a mage. But he responds that there's no such thing, as Shikami has been trained for this. Shikami brags about his muscles and strength, which are considered irregular even among the awakened. Meanwhile, the captain thinks to herself that the match will end instantly due to the complete disparity between Shikami and Minado. Before the match begins, Shikami asks Minado if he was really giving lessons to Hiko. Minado responds that he's just a messenger and only passed on a few lessons. Shikami starts to belittle Minado, calling him a so-called genius who takes ideas from others and claims them as his own. He adds that Hiko is a genius just like him and would rise to the top easily, even without Minado's tips. Ignoring the insults, Minado simply says that they think alike. Irritated, Shikami activates his ability, Violent Right, creating claws and charging at Minado with enhanced muscles. Minado thinks about how fast Shikami is but crouches, preparing his fist, which begins to emanate golden energy. He dodges Shikami's attacks while wrapping himself in golden energy. The Todoroki captain urges Shikami to give it his all. However, in the middle of the exchange, Minado grabs Shikami's arm and slams him into the ground with full force, creating a crater with the arm throw. Everyone around begins to rise, commenting that Minado caused such destruction with just a redirection of force. The two stare at each other with Shikami upside down and Minado telling him he's strong. Both smile at each other. Shikami warns that Minado is really sarcastic as he frees himself and lands back on the ground with the other candidates, who admire Shikami's quick recovery, and that despite the impact, they only broke the ground, remaining intact. Sakazaki asserts that, judging by Shikami's irregular physique, his resilience far surpasses that of a normal awakened. Minado, seeing Shikami approaching, realizes he cannot win by counterattacking alone. So he uses one of the falling rocks as support, propelling himself forward with one leg using the light kick, multiplied by penetration. He stomps the ground as his other foot sinks into Shikami's stomach, twisting his opponent's body. This move is named the Luminance Kick. It sends Shikami zigzagging until his energy depletes, causing him to collapse to the ground, leaving all the candidates impressed. Shikami lies twisted and defeated. This grants victory to Minado, earning him 2 more points while the founders celebrate seeing their techniques being used. Hizaki remarks to Sakazaki that Minado has definitely surpassed Shikami in strength, asking if Sakazaki hadn't said that Minado was only superior in mana. Sakazaki reflects that he didn't anticipate Minado's hand-to-hand combat capabilities being so high and thinks that if left unchecked, he would naturally eliminate him. As he adjusts the computer, Sakazaki contemplates how Minado might stand in his way. We fast forward slightly to when Shikami wakes up, observing Minado while being healed by him. Shikami begins to complain, but Minado warns him to stay quiet while he continues the healing. Still lying on the ground, Shikami grumbles, asking if Minado truly outmatches him in strength, mana, and can even heal. He questions if Minado can really do everything. Minado recalls the scene of the fallen Sioux squadron as he responds, saying it's not quite like that, but Shikami should now be able to stand up. Shikami wonders what the hell this kid is, but is interrupted by a massive explosion from the other battles that had started simultaneously. One of the battles was between Koki and Jiryu, with Jiryu emerging victorious. The second was Akihina versus Sonok, where Sonok claimed victory. However, the ongoing match is between Sakazaki and Hizaki. Isaac mocks Sakazaki, asking if he thinks he's strong just because he has a stable high-level ability, lamenting that even with that, without a special ability, he would just be a disposable piece. Isaac declares that the lack of ability isn't a trait of a captain. Sakazaki laments but responds that he's not the type who enjoys standing out. He explains that a high-level genius isn't something that can be manufactured, and if a person of common level takes on that role, it leads to nothing but death. Captains need to have the adaptability to increase their members' survival chances by even 1%, and that's the role he intends to assume. While Minado recalls the funeral of the Sioux Squadron, Sakazaki looks directly at him, stating that all of this is to avoid the same miserable fate that some members of the Sioux Squadron suffered because of their captain. Even Shikami tells the four-eyed bastard to shut up because he's crossing the line. Minado thanks Shikami for his comment, while Hizaki used a taijutsu technique, the disciplined chains word, striking Sakazaki multiple times until he collapsed. However, just as she was about to finish the fight, Sakazaki announced his surrender, ending the confrontation. The superintendent's assistant ended the fight despite Hizaki being furious at Sakazaki for surrendering so easily. She attempted to continue, but Akihina held her back. Sakazaki explained that he wasn't used to fighting barbaric women and that the fight would have lasted a long time, so he preferred to conserve energy as there were still several tests left. Deep down, however, he believed he could have defeated her if he wanted to. He also considered that he didn't want to reveal his cards to Minado yet as he stared at him. The second stage concluded, and once again, Minado emerged as the champion with a total of 5 points. The assistant announced a 30-minute break for everyone, during which the next rankings would be determined. In this round, the last 4 with the fewest points would be eliminated. Minado thought to himself that Shinji and Ichika were really late since they were already on break, wondering if they'd gotten lost on the way. The scene cuts to Shinji saying they had finally arrived, but he notices they are not at the exam site, but at the HQ. He questions why they are there. Ichika remains silent for a moment before revealing that someone had died there recently and that there was still a lingering aura. She stated that a monster had passed through, activating a bizarre vision to detect footprints and bloodstains. Shinji questions whether there might really be an infiltrator within the anti-prophecy, as this location was supposed to be an absolute secret. Ichika suggests it was likely one of the 12 apostles, as they knew about Captain Su Makoto and probably found this place. Shinji is shocked as she calls him to finally head to the exam site. Ichika reflects that the person who died was likely of captain-level strength, but no deaths have been reported. They both consider whether it's Midori seeking vengeance for Makoto's death. The scene closes with a determined Ichika and Shinji, and finally, Minado staring ahead. We cut directly to the snack break during the admission exam for squad captain, where we see some candidates eating, treating injuries, and chatting. Finally, Minado notices his master and Shinji arriving, welcoming them as she comments that she's glad she didn't have to throw herself into a volcano. The candidates recognize her as one of the people, like Midori in the Anti-Prophecy Special Missions team. Hizaki questions why they're talking as if explaining something to someone. Shinji asks Ichika if she hadn't said that someone at a captain's level had been killed, but all 7 captains are present. We see all the captains talking as Ichika smiles and calls for Minado, saying she has something to tell him. Time skips forward slightly and Minado starts asking in a panic if one of those people could actually be an apostle. Shinji calls him an idiot and tells him not to speak so loudly. Ichika confirms that the chances are indeed very high based on what she saw in the courtyard. At least one person of captain level was killed. However, since all the captains are present, this seems impossible when thinking rationally. It makes more sense if someone is in disguise at this location. Minado asks if this isn't extremely dangerous, and Shinji agrees, noting that if someone who killed a captain is present, failing to resolve the issue will only result in more victims. Worse, it could lead to a prophecy-level event of human extinction. Ichika interrupts, asking if it wouldn't just be easier to kill everyone here. Both of them plead with her not to do that, as Minado concludes that they essentially need to identify and eliminate the infiltrator from the 12 apostles. Ichika agrees and points out that if they're talking about the 12 apostles, one of them killed Makoto. She asks if Minado's heart doesn't burn with that thought. He recalls the scene of Sue's death and simply replies, yes. He becomes pensive, and in his mind we see a new founder appear, suggesting it would be good to examine the crime scene in the courtyard. However, since they are in the middle of the exam, that won't be possible. This is Azure, the detective among the founders. Minado suggests that they could leave and return since there's still time during the break. However, Azure warns that such a move would alert the perpetrator. They must assume that the culprit is at the same level as the apostle from the Snowy Mountain and could kill everyone there if they wanted to. Azure insists they must prepare for such an event. Minado thinks that this will probably be the last test of the day, so he can go there afterward. Still, he wonders if the founders can truly detect any clues after a captain was killed within the Anti-Prophecy headquarters. Reichiro agrees, noting that their training on the mountain for over a month serves as preparation. That mountain is the birthplace of the Hinoki sword style. For the enemy to have been detected so close, it's clear clearly someone connected to the 12 apostles. Azure complains about their lengthy explanation, insisting it's his duty as the detective. Raichiro retorts that Azure should quickly identify the culprit since he's eager to kill them. Minado questions whether everyone from the Hinoki family is obsessed with carnage. Azure asks Minado if he could pose a question to Ichika, who immediately asks aloud whether if the killer is captain level, the infiltrator could be one of the candidates. Ichika understands his point and confirms that it's a real possibility based on what she knows. However, suspicion should not be focused on the captains. Minado agrees and predicts that the next round will likely test combat abilities. He states that he has an idea. As the break comes to an end, however, his plan is completely shattered when the third stage turns out to be a written test. During the test, candidates are seated in private cubicles, with no phones or conversation allowed. Minado laments that there's no way to identify the target like this, especially since he knows nothing about the exam material, which covers the rules of the anti-prophecy. Nevertheless, he resolves not to give up. When the scores are announced, Minado fails to place even third and performs worse than the guy who was sleeping. However, he isn't eliminated due to his strong performance in the previous 2 rounds. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for Shikami, who is eliminated. Despite this, Shikami congratulates Minado on his performance, rumbling about Sakazaki scoring full marks. Minado remarks that only the 2 of them scored 0. Still, Shikami assures Minado that he's incredible for remaining in first place. Shikami admits he had already given up since he failed both the combat and mana tests. He tells Minado he'll be rooting for him, but is also eager to see who the new captain will be. Shikami notes that this isn't just about recruiting a captain, but also understanding how the groups will function. Since a squad needs at least 7 people, Minado will have to recruit 6 members if he becomes captain. He advises Minado to think carefully about whom to recruit. Shikami also offers his services, claiming he's the strongest in physical combat and recommending himself for recruitment when the time comes. With that, he bids farewell, and without wasting time, Azure tells Minado to hurry to the courtyard. Minado asks if Azure already has a suspect. Azure confirms, noting that he is after all the best detective. However, he still needs one more clue to reach a conclusion, and now is the time to uncover the culprit. We begin the chapter with a narration. After being nominated to become a captain and the Sioux squadron being eliminated, a vacancy for a new squad opened. Following a recommendation from Ichika, Minado entered the exam to become a squad captain. However, it was also Ichika who delivered the tragic news. Among all of them, one was an imposter, someone who had killed and replaced a member, either a captain or a candidate. Because of this, one of the founders, Azure, had to appear to conduct an investigation, assisting Minado with his deductive methods. Ichika is interrupted as someone asks why she's speaking in that tone, but she simply claims it's to lighten the mood. Minado, controlled by Azure, investigated the area. When questioned, he confirmed that if they discover the victim, they will uncover the infiltrator, also confirming that the culprit is one of the apostles. Captain Obvious, huh? Raichiro states that now that they've confirmed it's one of the apostles, they can be sure the infiltrator also possesses one of those abominations, a prophecy book. As Azure starts speaking again, he's interrupted by the rustling of leaves. He stops controlling Minado, who looks back and sees the superintendent emitting a blinding light as she questions what he's investigating. Minado asks who she is, but she merely states she's a passing lady and again demands an answer. Minado replies that he's investigating a murder that happened in this area. She is impressed, especially that he also noticed and realizes he's one of the exam candidates. She comments that he seems competent and suggests that if that's the case, they must uncover the culprit. However, Minado denies it. After all, he already knows who the culprit is, though he can't expose them yet. It's not just a mere hunch. The superintendent, confused, asks why they can't immediately deal with the culprit. Minado explains it's because the culprit is strong and probably not alone. There are 2 of them. She questions whether there really are 2. He adds that it would be better to defeat them both at the same time, and he plans to resolve it the next day. He asks her to simply watch rather than interfere. The woman, who he assumes is just a random granny, wishes his effort success, calling him boy. However, Minado asks her to call him by his name, Kanaji Minado. She promises to remember while disappearing once more. Our protagonist is left stunned, watching her vanish completely. We advance to the next day. The superintendent is seen walking alongside her assistant, who asks if everything is really fine. The old woman dismisses the concern, saying she doesn't mind and that Minado is probably closest to the truth, so she'll let him execute his plan and see where it leads. She instructs her assistant to inform Tenjin to cover the boy in case anything happens, concluding that when she felt the strange residue and approached, she didn't expect to find anything interesting, but ended up doing so. Her assistant stares at her, puzzled, and asks if she's placing too much hope in Minado. She simply replies it's because of his eyes. We skip ahead again to the next day, where Minado encounters Shikami. Shikami suggests they stick together and informs him that today's exam will test how well he performs as the captain of a team. He mentions that Sakazaki will likely excel in intelligence and strategy, but assures Minado he's rooting for him. Minado thanks him, but asks why he deliberately withdrew from the exam. Shikami explains that he changed his strategy halfway through, believing that doing things his own way while being part of a group would be better. Minado pauses and asks if Shikami is planning to join forces to eliminate the promising jewels of the other teams. Shikami remarks that he wouldn't mind killing someone if a new replacement were needed. Shikami reflects on how he couldn't perform well in the exam because his ability only allows him to extract the knowledge stored in the host's brain. Minado mocks him, saying that wasn't part of his plan. Shikami agrees, noting that it would have been better to take over Sakazaki's body. He then asks if that's the reason they're here. Meanwhile, we see the captains restraining the leader of the Todoroki squadron, Kuchiro. One captain asks the apostle if they would mind introducing themselves. In Shikami's body, the apostle announces herself as Eva, the ninth apostle. She explains that her ability allows her to steal the body of someone she has killed and access the knowledge in their brain. She admits, however, that she hadn't expected the existence of Kanagi Minado. She chose Shikami's body because of his superior physical strength. A captain questions Eva about her goal, asking if it's to destroy the anti-prophecy from within. Eva confirms this, but since she's been exposed, she declares she'll have to kill everyone present. Before doing so, however, she asks who discovered she was the enemy. The captain replies that the person has been by her side the whole time, Kanagi Minado. Eva admits she hadn't expected Minado to have the courage to stay by her side in such a situation. Staring at him and emitting a green aura, she finally asks, "Who are you?" Then the scene cuts. Right before Shikami's body was taken over by Eva, the other was excitedly saying, "Are you going to recommend me to be the captain of the new squad, Captain Tobidor?" He shouted back, answering, "That's right. That information will be announced tomorrow morning, so it's still a secret." She grew confident as he spoke. "It's true," and they laughed together. He commented that besides the squad captains, he was the strongest one there. Surely, he would make a great captain, and he would be rooting for him. At that moment, he corrected himself, "Captain, no master. Please watch me." Before he could continue speaking, his body was sliced. He saw everything with a bloodthirsty expression and muttered, "That kid was just weak." After he fell to the ground, someone approached, saying, "Is this really the power of a candidate for the anti-prophecy captain? Perhaps they are indeed too strong, and all of this is thanks to the artifacts their leader gave them." Then she introduced herself as Eva, one of the 12 apostles they were hunting, and that was how he was picking up the body from the ground. Afterward, someone used Vera's ability, punching hard while crying, "Damn you, how dare you." However, another character appeared from behind saying, "Incredible, you managed to crush one of the 12 apostles with a single blow. As expected from my master." When he turned to see who it was, he was cut in half. As the attacker smiled, they said, "Wrong master. I am Eva, and I borrowed this boy's body." Eva used the necromancer's dance artifact, and after dripping it on him, Shikami ended up standing again. She said, "Great, now he will be the master's slave body." Understood. The body immediately responded, "Yes, sir." Eva, irritated, corrected, "Damn it, my name isn't Eva, it's Shikami." Answer as Shikami. They laughed together as the scene paused. Our detective was using his detective theater ability. With this skill, he could go back in time to a scene from the night of the crime. The condition for activation was that Uzuri had evidence and knew who the culprit was not just by looking at the past, but by deducing the entire case. He could also foresee a future crime if there was a weakness. The ability was useless if he couldn't deduce anything or if there was no conclusion. Throughout his life, Uzuri had never been wrong. The other founder commented that this was an ability that allowed one to take the place of someone they had killed, and that the artifact could control a body, just like a necromancer. The samurai said, "That explains everything. Since there are two culprits, no matter how many times we see this, it remains disgusting." At that moment, everyone was surprised by the aura Minado was emanating. The founder herself asked, "Minado?" Filled with rage, he responded that he would not forgive that while his mark burned on his hand. In an instant, his fists were already on the enemy's face, saying, "This is the lightning reflection mirror." Minado punched hard, sending the opponent flying backward. When he tried to get up, Minado launched another colossal blow, exploding everything around him. The enemy, however, laughed and said, Hey, you're so cruel, Minado." He then activated some kind of strange power and said, "We should act like friends after this fight. Are you really going to hurt me?" In Minado's mind, he thought, as expected, "My current strength still isn't enough to defeat an apostle." The enemy continued, "That wasn't bad at all. If you keep going like this, you won't be able to do anything against my true self." Frustrated, Minado affirmed that he would not be the one to defeat that opponent. His hair began to turn white and he declared, "Now the Mage of Truth will take care of everything." From afar, someone was watching and thinking, so that's what was reported from the satellite. He became a completely different person. He laughed, saying, "Great Minado." Green clouds formed in the sky and lightning began to fall. From above, several mummies descended while someone said, "Life is quite boring until you die in the end. Let's play with all our hearts from now on." The founders watched everything on their screens, wondering, what was that? It seems like Eva is just an empty shell. With the help of an artifact, she controls all the bodies she's already defeated. The bodies possess the same physical strength as this type of body, so they would have a lot of fun. The other, with white hair, said that looking from here, it seemed like there were about 100 bodies at Shikami's level. Another was desperate, asking asking what they were going to do. For Captain Reek, Minado was there saying that he had destroyed the dignity of all those people. This is disgusting. But in her mind, the Apostle of Magic said that Minado had changed. He asked, I changed? From where? But perhaps the founders had changed as well. From the outside, Minado said that Ito was underestimating him. At the same time, all those bodies began to descend and Haddad's lightning struck everyone. Eva, who was in Shikami's body, saw all of that, impressed, while the Apostle of Magic said, what's the point of summoning so many bodies from the sky? Just finish them off before they hit the ground. That way, the bodies began to catch fire and fell to the ground. Eva was standing there thinking, what was that he just did? Because it's normal for people to have high shooting accuracy after intense training, but without even blinking, he hit all those beams without missing a single target, and he hadn't even looked up. The mage told Minado to stay by her side and pay attention to this fight. He was already descending and thought, this is incredible. Even using her body, she probably didn't use even half of her power, yet she used all those abilities so skillfully. She said that in the beginning, he was only chasing power for himself. At that moment, everyone was anxious for an opportunity to use their powers in that body. Minado didn't understand what she was talking about, but after that, he became blinded by power and almost achieved what he wanted. He just wanted to become stronger using what he had gained. They too became blinded by his talent. Then he witnessed a horrible tragedy and someone he respected entrusted the future to his hands. Now he did his best for those who died by his hands. He awakened a rage deep in his heart, and as he could see, they truly enjoyed that. Eva stood there holding fire in her hands, asking, what are you whispering about over there? Then he started running, saying that the weak will always be crushed by the strong. That's how the world works. But when he got close, those beams struck down as he jumped to the other side. He glanced at what was happening while Minado said, many people think like that, but it's not just that. They remember it perfectly. Everyone who wanted to destroy the tower was crushed and swallowed by the strongest from another dimension. Their hearts burned for the lives of the weak. Then she said, Minado, what you lack is strength. She knew how frustrating that was. While he trained on the mountain, he smiled on the outside, but inside, it was as if he were shattered into pieces. The mage apostle told him not to forget that everyone there had once thought like him, so he would definitely reach the same level as them. When he was in trouble, they would help him just like now. And if he got angry or sad about something unfair, he could simply aim at the injustice and make it suffer. That way he can end all prophecies. Then he used his final strike, twisting Shikami's entire body. After that, the sky seemed to open again as his body was torn apart. The people watching said, that really was Minado. While another said, he looks like Midori when he was just a child. A monster in person. He destroyed more than 100 test subjects in the sky and now defeated Shikami's body. He approached, saying, well, you finally understood the difference between our strength, right? Because there were many questions he wanted to ask. Then she said, don't worry, because we're going to have a nice interrogation and she'll tell us everything she knows. After that, someone said that number 12 had already kicked the bucket and she couldn't beat him with that body. She said she was glad he had listened to the leader's advice because she would now use her trump card. At that moment, a coffin fell beside them and Minado thought, what is this? The guy started speaking, do you know? Hundreds of years ago, the one who destroyed the tower, one of the founders, the assassin of the army of 10,000 men, the coffin of Hinohiru. Our samurai stood there impressed, saying, whoa, how did they get my body? At that moment, a massive lightning bolt struck the coffin and his body. Meanwhile, another one said, calm down, Mel's. But he said he really did seem strong because he ended up cutting her lightning bolt. He emanated an intense green aura while saying, well, this is really amazing. Minado looked at that astonished because that aura was the same he had felt during training with Ichirera. No, it was even stronger than that. He waved his hands, saying he would go too. Several bodies emerged from the ground because the second wave of test subjects was about to begin. Minado watched all of that in awe while the mage said, all right. At that moment, everything behind the imposter samurai exploded. He looked back while someone reminded Minado not to forget that all his companions were there fighting together because he wasn't alone. The samurai looked up, asking what this mess was. In Minado's mind, he thought that this guy had the same tone of voice as the real samurai and even spoke in a similar way. He walked forward, saying he felt sorry for him since his test subjects were quite strong. At that moment, one of them was attacking the mummy-headed figure. He countered with a strong punch to the ground. The blonde-haired one wondered if he had physical reinforcement because even using his strongest sword, he didn't suffer any damage. Then he came to a conclusion, perhaps the test subjects possessed abilities, each one of them. The strong guy held a sword, thinking these mummies were tough to take down. Meanwhile, another one with green hair ran off, wondering why there were so many of them here. The white-haired captain began to exude a pink energy around her because she was activating her sound visualization ability. In her head, a composition began to play until all of it transformed into a massive phoenix. She was enjoying it, making all those sounds follow the great phoenix. Then someone called her name and she said that things didn't look good. Even though they were just empty bodies, they could still use abilities. At that moment, a chain broke while the green-haired guy looked up. Someone came from the sky sky using a powerful ability, and just touching the ground shattered everything around them. The captain jumped, thinking this was expected. On the other side, the samurai laughed, saying that all this chaos was truly incredible, because this way, no one besides the squad captains would survive. Minado looked back, saying that's exactly what he had said, and asked what they thought. All the founders let out a deep sigh while Minado smiled. Then he asked to borrow Mel's body for a moment. From outside, he asked if he had said that no one would survive. The samurai looked surprised, but Minado, confident, told him not to underestimate his friends, the 12 apostles. On the other side, several surrounded our blonde kicker. He looked serious, thinking that it was many against one, just like he had learned in Lesson 7. Then he began to take a deep breath. At that moment, a massive dragon appeared, covering everything. This was the first technique of the rapid dragon ascension. With this, he charged forward, striking all the mummies with his kicks. The fifth saint thought that Hikotoru had an interesting physique. His body was full of muscles and yet very flexible at the same time. That's why the combat tactic he always used was a single concentrated attack focused on one point paired with his agility. Another founder said that it wasn't bad, but it was a shame it wasn't as efficient. If he wanted to make the most of his talent, he should use an infallible and threatening move, the bird coil. It cuts, binds, and overloads everything in its path. With that, he began kicking using the great flying dragon. After defeating another one, he was already asking for the next. On the other side, the mummies were surprised. The mage said she couldn't be left behind by Heiko. She had also received advice. The founder said that alchemy is a technique that transmutes an imperfect substance and turns it into perfection. Akainen focused too much on the word battle, and as a result, she produced low-quality weapons. Doing things like that only delayed an alchemist's progress. That's why she began using Trismegistus magic, because alchemists are beings who grasp and overcome the world's taboos. Now she summoned a great golem of the Stone of Truth, Evimins. Akainen looked confident, saying that this was the result of Lesson 8, and with it, she could even destroy those physically reinforced test subjects. In Minado's mind, he called for the samurai. The samurai confidently told him not to worry about Su Shinji. He himself was jumping over the monsters, saying he might not be as good as his brother, but he also had his talents. He descended using the ability Fallen Sky, slicing through all the mummies. Then he struck hard at another group, cutting with his sword. Even the master thought that was a good combination of attacks, because combining techniques and abilities always had a limit. But what Minado was doing was also possible for Shinji. Then she looked impressed. A massive explosion of fire was happening. She sliced through another enemy, thinking that Minado's battle against one of the 12 apostles had begun. But she noticed something different, because the founder who created the Hinoki technique was part of this battle. Then she screamed, not understanding what was happening. The man came forward, wielding a one-handed sword style. Amidst the great fire hurricane, with the two staring each other down, the supposed Reichiro used the ability Hinoki one-handed sword style, blade cutting wave. The entire hurricane was split in half by a single slash. However, Mel's using Minado's body activated Hadad's thunder to create hands and strike him. Unfortunately, the imposter managed to repel the attacks, countering with Q-shaped slashes that cut and lifted everything around them into square chunks torn from the ground. At least Minado managed to dodge and climb onto one of the cubes. Minado even remembered having used stability against Midori before, and the concerning thing was that this ability could cut anything. The bigger problem was that he wasn't just focusing on Minado. He was attacking everything around him, and people from Minado's group were starting to get hurt. Mel's created small shields around them to prevent them from getting injured or falling into the crater, taking the chance to move them away from the confrontation. Inside Minado's head in the founder's space, Mel's asked what they would do in this situation. Inoki simply left everything to them and told them to do whatever they wanted. In the real world, the imposter used another technique from the Hinoki one-handed style, the Cloud Divider, launching a thunderous attack against Minado. But after the strike, he could only laugh, seeing that the boy was still alive. What made the apostle happiest, however, was being in a founder's body, the best body she could have when it came to battle. To kill Minado, she said she would need just one strong ability, the strongest one. She then began using the Hinoki one-handed sword style secret move, Indomitable. The attack cut through the air towards Minado, who stopped it with just one hand, leaving the apostle confused and unable to understand what was happening. The answer to this was simple. In the founder's space, Inoki complained that all of this was boring since, even using his body, she was still too weak. Together with the founders, Minado said she was far too weak while letting go of the imposter's arm. She logically became terrified, asking what the hell he was talking about. How could this body be weak when it was the body of the legendary founder? In desperation, she started searching through the founder's brain for something, a stronger ability capable of defeating the monster that was Minado. In the middle of her search, she suddenly began to cry. The reason Eva was crying was due to a memory permanently etched in Reichiru's brain from when he was still alive. Just by looking at his memories, Eva was driven to the brink of madness. The tower had been sliced with a single sword. As Reiichiro cried, he became colder and more indifferent. Eva couldn't withstand this lapse, thinking it was too much, even for him. Hinoki Reiichiro's memory was filled with humans and monsters being sliced, the ocean along with the planet itself being cut apart, and a vision so grim that despair consumed Eva, leaving her questioning where she should go to become stronger. Back in the real world, Eva began to say that she could never use that, complaining that even her own soul was being destroyed. Inside the Founder's space, Reiichiro asked for the soul to be destroyed immediately. However, Eilerson insisted that if the soul was destroyed and the body consumed by madness, they would all die. The problem was that it was already too late. A dark aura began to emanate from Hinoki's body as everyone realized that madness had consumed him. The pressure was so immense that even in the city of Takasaki in Guma Prefecture, everyone felt a tremor and the energy from the Founder's body. Karaseji ordered the immediate evacuation of the residents and began checking his phone, detecting that they were 100 kilometers from the epicenter. This made him question whether such a monster could truly exist in the modern era. In Minado's mind, he called for the samurai. The samurai confidently told him not to worry about Su Shinji. Returning to the confrontation, the Founder's body screamed and everyone began to be crushed against the ground by the pressure he exerted. His aura was far too powerful. Even within Minado's mind, as he begged for Reiichiro's help, Reiichiro once again stated that he would leave everything in Mel's hands. Mel said she understood. She confidently stated that since it was Minado's body, one attack should be enough, and she began to use the Seal of Truth. From an outside perspective, this vision resembled a small spark of light, Minado going against the strongest darkness. Inside his head, the Founder of Alchemy said that even if she couldn't hear him, Minado had to pay close attention alongside Akan. Whether it was magic or alchemy, both were researchers of the world's truth, and the scene they were about to witness was one of the world's truths. He even wondered whether the supreme body, the body of Reiichiro, could endure one of the fragments of the truth. Eva's soul had already been torn to pieces, and the only thing moving the Founder's body were the remnants of what Ego once was. But the body would move on instinct like a wild animal seeking destruction. Reiichiro had once been immature, and he had left his body in this state long ago. As a way to remind him, there was one word that could be used: true ignorance. Amidst this fog, with both of them staring at each other and preparing for battle within the dark release emanating from Reiichiro's body, Mel's eyes shone with the activation of the truth. A vision was revealed, a glimpse of utter destruction. Minado's body and those of his friends were sliced into countless pieces. Everything was cut apart, people across the continent, and this cutting aura spread throughout the world, causing a catastrophe. In the end, only Reiichiro would remain alongside his madness. But this was merely what would happen. Using the Eye of Truth, Mel saw how it would end. But she was Melcia's, Silentia's truth, and her ability, Seal of Truth, Magar Heimet, had been sealed because the world could not handle that truth. None of this power's effects nullify the target's abilities. Mel's in Minado's body held Reiichiro's hand without any problem, and that was the answer. With a simple handshake, Mel's activated Blazing Light, Enlil's Melem, creating a bright flash that temporarily blinded everyone. When their sight returned, only the charred body of Reiichiro remained standing. In a farewell to the body of her old friend, she said she hoped to see him again at the end of the cycle. In an instant, Reiichiro's body turned to dust, ascending toward the sky. In the silence that followed, all the Founders paid their respects. The real Reiichiro spoke, saying he was still there and that they should stop with this nonsense. However, Mel stated that the soul and the body were entirely different. After everything, the Founder Magus asked whether this had helped the protagonist with his training. As Minado's hair returned to normal, everyone around him began to celebrate his victory over the monster that was Reiichiro. Hinoki's descendant complained that Minado should have at least used his sword, since otherwise the entire month of training with her had been pointless. The blonde boy, whom I still mistake for a girl, wondered just how strong the protagonist could become. Shinji commented that Minado was terrifyingly strong, having turned such a powerful enemy into ashes in an instant. But Akane corrected him, saying that the most frightening part wasn't that, it was the moment before when Minado nullified such a powerful ability with one hand. This lit a fire in her mind, making her wonder if a human could ever reach such a peak, and if anyone could, it would be her. The superintendent's secretary wondered what they would do with the enormous crater left in the ground. After all, this was supposed to be just an exam to decide a new captain. He also questioned whether, because of Todoroki's death, they would need to hold another exam. But amid everyone, a bubble appeared, startling them as they wondered if a mummy had survived. However, emerging from the bubble were the superintendent herself and her assistant. This even shocked the secretary. Minado recognized her from the night before, but what truly surprised everyone was when she approached Minado, bowed in front of him, and said she had been waiting for their return for hundreds of years, welcoming the Founders. Even the Founders were shocked inside Kaneji's mind. Shinji even questions Ichika, who explains that while they might not know her since they've never seen her, she is one of the founders of the Anti-Prophecy and holds the highest rank in the Japanese branch. However, they complain that they weren't talking about that. They wanted to know why the office superintendent was kneeling before Minado. Not even Ichika seems to have any idea what's going on. Minado is also confused because he doesn't know why she's kneeling before him. He thinks that she must know about them, so perhaps they should know her too, but everyone denies ever having seen her before. However, the aura she carries feels familiar, something Raichuru has seen before. The old lady starts asking if they really don't remember her, likely because she's become so elderly. To remind them, she claps her hands as if preparing to use an abil. No, she starts to dance. She tells Raichuru to look at her, performing the waist dance, and apparently, thanks to this, they all remember her. Her name is Io, and Raichuru immediately asks Minado to switch places with him. As soon as they do, Raichuru begins saying how long it's been since they last saw each other. This surprises everyone, especially the two assistants of the superintendent, who grow irritated at Raichuru's rudeness towards her. While they swear to kill Kanji, lamenting that after everything, the #1 candidate would have to die in such a way, Raichuru dances with the old lady in the same manner she does. After they finish, Io simply looks at the two angry assistants charging towards Minado and tells them it's fine. Raichuru comments that she truly has become an old lady after all this time, but Io can only thank him for still being the same as he was in the past. Sometime later, after everything settles down, people are exhausted because they're being forced to reconstruct the giant hole left in the ground. Inside the anti-prophecy at the hidden place of the Eternal Vision, Minado is amazed that such a place actually exists. Io explains that this is precisely because she cannot show herself often. A barrier keeps the location protected, which is why she lives there. Minado understands and asks how she knows all the founders. She begins to explain that she is, in fact, an orphan who lost her family during the era of the Tower. She was saved by the founders. This deeply impresses Minado because if she's a child of the era of the Tower, that would mean she's over 300 years old. Io explains that she stopped her body's aging process using an artifact, and as long as she stays inside that base, her body will not age. This is incredible, as there are very few such artifacts. It's almost the same as Valentine's preservation ability, which at her peak allowed her to achieve the same result with magic alone. But for Io to possess such an artifact is truly impressive, and even Valentine wonders where she got it. Io explains that within the anti-prophecy, there is a specialized group dedicated to collecting artifacts. This group isn't affiliated with any country, and its entire existence is a secret. Recently, however, one of their artifact warehouses was attacked, resulting in the loss of many valuable items. Midori himself created a team to recover these artifacts. The founders suspect that it was likely the 12 apostles who attacked the warehouses. The so-called Sherlock of Paraguay suggests that, given the apostles are some of the strongest awakened beings of the modern era, he could use his ability to investigate the scene. Eva had mentioned that she became so powerful thanks to the artifacts given to her by their leader. The conclusion was simple. It's easier to enhance the strength of 12 mediocre individuals using artifacts than to find 12 people stronger than Su Makoto. Reichiro agrees, noting that the last two enemies they fought weren't even close to Makoto's talent. Io states that she wasn't aware of the 12 apostles' existence until the artifact incidents. They possess power equivalent to the anti-prophecy, and such a threat cannot simply be ignored. They committed all their strongest resources to finding the apostles' leader. However, Io suspects that Midori will locate the leader before the anti-prophecy does. Now we move to the state of Michigan and Detroit, where an enormous light engulfs a destroyed part of the city. A long unseen ability is activated, Turbulence. In a chaotic swirl of green energy, a hurricane of destruction wreaks havoc across the area. Amidst the destruction, he appears, the GOAT. Midori states that even though they are called the 12 apostles, there has always been a 13th person. A man sits in an armchair, floating in the air while sipping a drink, surrounded by a purple shield. He remarks that he wasn't expecting Midori to arrive so quickly. He asks Midori whether he prefers a cup of coffee or black tea. But with a single threat, Midori commands, "Number 0, die." Once again using turbulence, Midori devastates the entire city, destroying everything and creating a hurricane of energy that spirals into the sky. A member of the Special Mission Forces, Nishina Q, realizes that it had finally begun. Alongside him is Mikado Shuchi, who wonders if that idiot Midori was trying to dig a tunnel through the world to the other side of the planet. As the two waited, a rain of slashes began to shred the building. However, they managed to dodge effortlessly and said they would leave Midori to deal with that, while they handled one of the 12 apostles, Kamaraji Hajime. On the other side, Midori is pondering. Even with the fiercest storm of cutting winds, nothing happened. He wonders if it's this man's ability or an artifact, but the man simply finishes his tea, begins to descend, and asks if Midori is ready. In a single instant, as the man steps out, Midori conjures the wall of cutting tears, forming many spheres of pure energy that surround and compress around the man, resulting in a massive green explosion in the sky. However, contrary to any expectation, the man merely asks if Midori had ever visited an aquarium park, where humans are invincible in front of the most dangerous predators of the ocean and can observe the fish in safety. The man compares that scenario to the current situation, saying that's essentially what's happening now. He didn't even suffer a scratch. Midori can only think that the man probably has another card up his sleeve besides his defense. Number 0 continues speaking, saying that from his perspective, perspective, he clearly understands that Midori would normally be strong and terrifying, but he doesn't even see Midori as an enemy. Midori is shaken by the death of a friend, Sue. He ends by calling Midori a pathetic creature, saying that from the moment he was born, he was only ever used for battle, and that's all he is, a creature that exists solely to fight, and yet he still couldn't protect his friend. Surrounded by energy and charging forward, Midori can only think that he's right. Now let's jump into a flashback, everyone. 23 years ago, the light had already been given. Where's yours? Jokes aside, 23 years ago, Shinano Tenjin was still part of the Special Mission Forces. He was observing an immense concentration of magic radiating from inside the Ijhar house. Even the superintendent was impressed by the sheer energy emanating from this center, which turned out to be a small baby radiating this tremendous aura. The superintendent had to personally attempt to retrieve the baby despite the danger. Simply approaching caused her body to be superficially cut in multiple places. When she finally got close, she embraced the frightened baby, gently asking him to calm down, assuring him that everything was okay. Thanks to her soothing words, the raging wind finally dissipated. She then decided that the baby would be raised by the anti-prophecy, and this baby was named Midori. 9 years later, we see Midori walking down the halls of the anti-prophecy. The predecessor of Hinoki Ichika, Hinoki Kijiro, asked if the boy was truly the cursed child. Ichika was accompanying Midori but couldn't understand what was happening. Kijiro warned Midori not to cause any trouble because if he ever became a problem for the anti-prophecy, Kijiro himself would hunt him down. Receiving such disrespect, Midori simply said that he hadn't caused any trouble, and because of that, he would let the old man live. After saying this, he just continued walking. The old man felt the threat and was indignant, but Ichika could only laugh at the situation since the boy didn't care about the threat and even retaliated with one of his own. In Midori's thoughts, they were weak. All of them were weak. Even with everyone opposing him, no one could do anything. No matter how hard they tried, they remained weak creatures. However, among all these people, one individual stood out, a red-haired boy who threw a wooden sword at him, only for it to be shattered by the wind. The boy asked what Midori was planning, but it wasn't about any plan. The red-haired boy approached again and extended another wooden sword, asking Midori to take it and become his sword training partner. Midori was deeply confused, but Sue Makoto simply smiled and asked if that was okay with him. Hey everyone, did you enjoy the story? I really liked it. If you want to follow the next part, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. See you in the next story, guys.